Good evening and welcome to the Littleton Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, December 4th. My name is Paul Glavy. I'm the Vice Chair of the Board, subbing tonight for Chairman Chuck DeCoste, who is out of town on business. Our proposed agenda for the evening, we're running a little late, but we will do the Pledge of Allegiance, read mail, have a congratulations to a resident who's reached her 100th birthday. At 6:40, which we're already pretty close to, we will have updates from the Director of Finance and Budget and from the Fire Chief on a variety of important topics. 7:20, public input and members' updates, and followed by public hearings at 7:30 and 8 o'clock. The first one has to do with vehicles and traffic regulations, establishing 20 and 25 mile per hour speed limits. That's at 7:30. At 8 o'clock, we have the public hearing on the Cricket Lane parcel, which is a town's right of first refusal under Chapter 61A. Scheduled to have 9 o'clock, town administrator, assistant town administrator, topics involving annual license renewals, and we have a number of them, and adjournment after that. So, without any objection, I would ask our clerk, Joe Knox, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, happy to have back our town administrator as well, Keith Bergman. And Keith, you want to lead us through the mail?
Sure, thanks, Mr. Chair. We have a few items in the mail packet. The Department of Revenue approved our fiscal 2018 property tax rates since our last meeting. Those reflect the policy decisions that you made at the classification hearing a couple of weeks ago. We also have a letter from written both from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council and the 495 Metro West Partnership announcing efforts to update the 495 Metro West Development Compact, which came out several years ago and included a number of so-called priority development sites. And we have the opportunity to update the information about those sites, as well as to identify additional sites that might be prioritized for development. So Maren has expressed interest in working on this, and so we'll be in contact with MAPC and the Metro West Partnership about providing additional information. It's not a grant. The grant funding is to do the update, and the communities that want to participate are asked to provide additional information for that effort. It was helpful, though, that back under Secretary Bielecki, when he was the Economic Development Secretary, there were a number of priority development areas in Littleton which were identified as state priority areas, including the Point and IBM and other areas. So we have the opportunity to still stay on the radar screen.
I'm glad you shared this with Maren, and I would say before we respond to this, I'm glad Mike Zeldin from the Master Plan Implementation Committee is here too. It's obviously been some time since this list was drafted. In the interim, we've adopted the master plan, so right. I think it's probably appropriate that the planning board take a look at it, but also the
Sure.
master plan committee. I can see, just looking at it, properties that have risen in terms of priority along the Taylor Street corridor are not represented here, and that's something I think will be coming up in the not too distant future for some attention.
And we have distributed this, I know, to the master plan committee thus far, and so we'll continue to be in touch with them about that.
No immediate action then on this?
No action, just we'll indicate a willingness to participate and provide information update.
And the onus is on us to update if that's what we want to do?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Michael, you're on top of that. I know I saw our agenda for tomorrow night's meeting. Yeah. Okay.
Great. And we also, in the packet, had a response from Mass Municipal Association thanking us for our prompt action and alerting our legislators when there was a threat to, before the Senate Ways and Means Committee, a threat to capping ambulance fees, which would have caused some financial problems, not only for us, but for many communities. And then, so that's what I have in the mail packet. And what we also wanted to take the time to do is to recognize the 100th birthday celebration of local resident Barbara Eliades, and to take the opportunity at a meeting to express the board's congratulations.
Well, I know it was Selectman Knox who suggested this. I think it's a great idea, and I'll be happy to read the certificate of recognition we have here in a moment, but I wonder if, Joe, you want to give any indication of what Barbara Eliades, who she is and what she's meant to the town?
I'll allow you to do that, Paul.
Well, just know that she is one of those folks who reflects the good living that must come with living on one of those farms on the Great Road corridor, because a lot of them seem to live good, long lives, and she comes out of that stock, and she's a wonderful lady, and I've known her, well, I haven't seen her in a few years, but as long as I've been alive, obviously, you too, Joe.
I remember campaigning back in the 80s and going to their house and seeing the two of them, and they both knew my father. And so when they wanted to talk to me, they said, "Hey, Noxie, over here." So it dates way back. Great family.
All right, well, I will, with sincere appreciation for contributions to the town, a certificate of recognition, the Littleton Board of Selectmen recognizes Barbara C. Eliades on the joyous occasion of her 100th birthday. On behalf of the people of Littleton, the Selectmen extend their very best wishes, given this 4th day of December 2017. Littleton Board of Selectmen, Paul J. Glavy, Vice Chair, and signed unanimously. And has this been extended to her yet, Keith?
No, that's, the Friends and the COA are going to have I don't think they do a breakfast, and at that point, once we hear about that date, we'll let the selectmen know. Hopefully, there's somebody that can represent and be there to present that certificate directly to her.
Okay, great. You've got an original of this, I'm sure.
We do have the original.
Great.
All right. Our updates, 6:40, we're not too far behind. First item would be Director of Finance and Budget, 5-year financial projections. Maybe we can cut that to 4 years and 8 months.
There you
just
go.
for the admin schedule.
Yeah, the bottom one advances it.
Okay, so this is your 20,000-foot view for the next 5 years. You have in front of you the books that have the detailed budget requests for fiscal 19 and the capital plan requests for each department.
Which is worth noting, this is as far in advance
As I've
as
ever.
we've ever had it, and you've always promised, and it gets better every year, and so, I mean, it's a big effort to get to this point, so it's worth recognizing. I mean,
Especially with the conversion going on.
yeah, right. I mean,
simultaneously.
I just remember the first year we tried this approach, we got them literally the day before.
I think so, yeah.
And I'm not blaming you, it's just, but to get to this point.
Someone was working this weekend on it, because I was getting questions this weekend.
All right, well, I know how much effort goes into it, so thank you for making
Oh, no
sure
problem.
that we have a couple of weeks to review this, and so that's,
Perfect. I also, before I started, wanted to note that when we set the tax rate, as you got in your mail, I actually got a call back from the Division of Local Services just to make note of the fact that we're reducing the excluded debt and that they don't see that in, hardly any community. So they were kind of impressed with the financial stability. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. So it was a nice call. So again, we're going to go through the 20,000-foot view. This will be condensed based on the materials that are in your book in the next 2 weeks. So you'll get a detailed budget update, many spreadsheets, a lot of information. This is not that meeting tonight, so. So in looking at the projections going forward, really anything in the next 3 years is a good set of numbers and sets of data to look at. That's what we know is in the pipeline for new growth, for construction projects that are underway, what's in permitting. Anything after 3 years, you're really just kind of taking your best guess. So we do 5 years, we track for 5 years, but I just would caution you, keep to the 3-year period as being more accurate. In all of these projections through the 5 years, we're adhering with any of the financial policy requirements for reserves, appropriations to stabilization, maintaining undesignated fund balance at a robust level. So in the fiscal 2019 forecast, again, 20,000-foot view, we're looking at about a 4.08% increase in the recurring revenue, which primarily is from the levy. We're looking at $1.7 million. 883,000 of that is the 2.5% increase that's allowed under the statute, and 843,000 is coming from new growth. Now, these are the projects that are in the pipeline, residential and commercial. So, like, as an example, the movie theater at the Point, those types of larger projects are in here. Local receipts, we're looking at just a 2% increase. I would note that local receipts, we adjusted by about 28% last year because of the full recognition of the room and meals tax increases due to the Point. So those are the big drivers of that. Excises, you know, it went up last year, but it was kind of flat after that. So we need to keep an eye on that. We have level funded net school state aid and non-school state aid. It's been relatively flat the last 5 years. We've had some years where it's increased, you know, 20,000, and then it's decreased 20. So I'm not really comfortable pushing those projections at this point. We haven't seen the House 1 budget come out yet. We won't see that till January at the earliest. So I'll have a better idea then. But it's been flat, so I'm comfortable keeping it here. Non-recurring and other revenues. We have just over $1.2 million from undesignated fund balance that's available for use for the, under the adopted financial policies for capital, and we use that annually in our capital plan. We're going to put $55,000 to stabilization, again, just to maintain that 5% reserve balance that is also in the financial policies. There's a reduction in the transfers from other available funds. That's primarily because we don't release overlay until the fall. Typically, we go through the abatement season, we see, you know, what we've used, and if there's any surplus, we'll release it in the fall. So last year, we released $500,000, so it's very close to.
And we're within the past couple of years of having a more formalized process for dealing with that in the fall, too.
Yes,
right?
yes, we use it only for capital-like expenses, one-time expenses, because it's a one-time revenue. You
So
could have
for-
no.
So for revenues for the coming operating budget year, we don't program
No,
those revenues.
no,
We get to spend them if they're left over in the fall.
right.
I see we're joined by the Chair of the Finance Committee, Greg Champney, tonight, so Greg, if you want to jump in, I'll invite you to do that at any point, too.
Bonnie's doing a great job running the line.
Okay.
Bunny, can you help me understand that $497,000 number again?
Sure.
I know you just explained it, and but
So
if you
last-
could try again.
Sure. Last fiscal year, I'm looking at fiscal 2018, or this fiscal year, 2018 as a whole. So in this fiscal year, in the fall, we had $500,000 of overlay surplus that was released.
Okay.
And we used it to reduce some of the excluded debt. So that won't happen again until next fall. So it's a $500,000 difference.
And maybe just to see in that,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
I'm not going to touch it.
Yeah, the 429,000 shows in this spreadsheet as,
Stabilization.
there's nothing in
overlay.
it for fiscal 19. There wasn't fiscal 18 because we had monies left over, not at the annual town meeting, but at the fall special. But we don't program those to spend a budget on. We, you know, if they become available, then we could spend them at a fall town meeting, but we can't program them. We can't count on them for building a budget for the fiscal year.
Some towns do, though, right? We're just
Some
being
do.
more
Yeah, some
prudent.
do.
Yeah, it's not,
we-
it's not recommended.
No, I'm glad
As in
I'm
some-
glad we're at where we're at.
As in, some towns essentially plan on coming in under budget and then,
No,
allocate
there
those-
are communities out there that
monies?
use their undesignated fund balance to balance their budget.
okay.
And that's called free cash. You can have negative free cash in any given year. Now, you know, we work really hard to not have that situation, but if you had negative free cash, you'd have to pay it. It's a bill that comes due. So again, if you program this overlay surplus on an operating budget that recurs the next year and they don't release any overlay, you've got to figure out how to fund it. Okay. Just want to go back to where I was.
You're advancing.
Oh, I am. Look at that. We're just going to
Paul
work
wanted to go a little faster.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to go right through
We've
this.
caught up with it, you know.
There you go.
Okay. Okay, so we've talked about that, and we went through this. So this is basically just a summary of the previous slides, kind of showing the levy limit, all of the other accounts that we use to create our spending plan. Again, it's not just the operating budget, it's the total spending plan. So it includes capital and any reserve payments that we make. So the forecast. We're looking at expenditure increases, again, just rough estimates based on what we know in collective bargaining agreement, step increases, any programs that we had previously authorized that we know are coming online. For an example, the paramedic program, the full implementation of the staffing. We're looking at a 3.48% increase in operating expenditures. The town operating budget would increase about $234,000, or almost 3%. And that includes the steps, but all of the collective bargaining agreements expire on June 30th, 2018. So there are no COLAs factored in here. We have a reserve set aside for, budget planning, but it's not in the operating budgets yet until those agreements are agreed upon.
Are the schools aware of, I'm not going to say are they okay with it, are they aware of the working number using their 3.25%?
This is not changed from last year, so this is the same number that I had programmed in at last year. I have not received the school request yet for operating. We know that this does cover the staffing increase, or the wage increases that we know are, and then some. But again, their collective bargaining agreement expired in 2017. It is close to being, resolved, but it has not at this point. They did build into their 2018 budget a number to settle those agreements. The technical school assessment, I have an increase programmed of about $146,000. That's about 10 students. It might be high, but the population at Neshoba Tech for Littleton is very low. It's about 30 students. So just an odd year increase could throw that kind of dramatically. I have asked the school for the population info, so I should have that in the next few days.
Is this all operating, or does this include their capital plan, too?
That includes their capital, too.
It does. Can they
Yes.
have-
They have one assessment that breaks it out by
And they've had significant work
investment
over-
and, yes. So that might be a little high, but I'd rather hedge at this point, just to be safe. Other charges, facility, infrastructure, $49,000, it's a small increase. It might not be enough, but we're kind of hopeful that it is. We had increased some of the public building expenses last year, and I'm hoping that will hold kind of through this year. We won't know until the fire.
This is maintenance and repair stuff, or?
Yes, it's facility operations, so it's heat, it's utilities, it's water, it's communications, those types of things. So it looks like it might be flat. We did increase it last year. I'm hoping that it is enough to cover it. We'll know more when the fire station comes online this year. I'll have a better idea when I get those bills. And then employee retiree benefits. It's a big number. It's $1.1 million, but it's about 14%, which is average for employee, health insurance, retirement assessment calculations, Medicare.
Big number, but not a surprise.
Not a surprise, no. So that's what we're looking for there. Debt service, we have a small increase. It would have been a larger increase had we not had some declining debt, coming off the books this year. It does include the interest payments for the fire station and alumni fields and the septic loan program. It is partially offset by the decreasing debt, and for fiscal 19, it will be the last year for the Shaker Lane debt, and the high school debt will be retired in 2023. Those larger pieces of debt are going to be fully replaced by alumni and the fire station notes coming on. So that's been the plan all along, and that's kind of, it's working. So you can see the level staffing assumptions here. Again, I said it was just about a 3% increase on the town. I've got 3.25 programmed for the school appropriation. The school does spend reserves in addition to the appropriation that town meeting gives them. I'm just estimating it at the same level that it was last year for this run, as I haven't received anything from the school department yet. You can see the large increase on the technical school, that's Neshoba.
Is the integration with the school computer, is that completed yet?
Oh,
Is that-
God, that won't be done till January of 19, fully. That's when the payroll piece
Everything was
comes
gonna be
on.
done by next July, no?
Financials, the GL and revenue piece, so my piece and tax will be done for July 1st. We'll start that live. And then payroll starts January 1st because it's easier to do a calendar year on payroll than a fiscal. But you'll see that citizens transparency module open in July, which will be kind of exciting to see. It's a complete redo of, everything that we have in place, so it's quite a bit. You can see the retiree benefits, employee retirement benefits are there with the $1.1 million. Capital and warrant articles, this is important to know that, the level is still at the same level that we had for fiscal 18, so we're not sacrificing our capital plan for this new debt that we're taking on, so that's a good piece to note. And then we have other amounts raised, snow and ice deficit, cherry seat charges. This increases because last year we had a relatively low snow and ice deficit, but we budget for one that's about $250,000 more, which we have hit in prior years, so we don't want to reduce that planning.
And does the state law still not allow us to reduce it, or does that ever change?
You can reduce it.
can
If
now.
you do reduce it, you can not deficit spend for it, or you can't, raise it on the recap the next time. So it's not prudent to do that. And then this is just a pie chart kind of showing, based on these assumptions, where the budget goes. And you can see the school appropriation is the larger piece of it. And I would note that the employee retiree benefits on the opposite side of the pie, at least half of that, or 60% of that is for the school also, because they make up the bulk of our employee base. And that's not unusual. I don't say that to point out as a big piece. That is kind of the norm for the state. Debt service is about 9%. The town operating budgets is about 16%. And then again, the capital down there is important to note that it's 5% of the budget, which is much better than it was 10 years ago. That's a good amount to have. And it's pretty much the same as it was in 18. Just some slight changes, 1% here or there. So it's pretty consistent. And this is just the same data in a bar chart. Some people are pie chart people, and some are bar chart people. So other assumptions for capital primarily. So we're looking at capital over the next 5 years here. If you look at what's requested for 19, I've got about $2.4 million available, and there's about $4.8 million requested. Now, this includes, $3.5 million that's requested in this year, and then $1.3 million that wasn't funded last year. So those things kind of roll forward and get reshuffled into the deck. Looking out over the next few years, you can see there's always more in requests than we have in available funds. So while we are spending, on maintaining our infrastructure and assets, there's always more. In 2022, I would note that it's low. The request in the 10-year plan right now is $1.6 million, but there's only $77,000 in that facilities plan study programmed for that year, and I feel it's low. I think that when the PMBC goes through their listing for that year, they're going to adjust that up. So the levy, you can see what we're looking at for a levy increase. This is with what we know is in process right now for permits. So 2019, 4.7, 2020, 392, 2021, 375. So you can see it's going down. If more projects come into the pipeline, we'll adjust this, obviously. But with what we know right now, that's where we're at.
Does any of this reflect past couple of years' policy of not taxing to the max? Is that built into the program here?
This is, what we do is, we take the levy and we apply it on the excluded debt. So we are capturing the levy, but we're reducing the excluded debt piece, and that is included in the 5-year plan. So we've already lowered the excluded debt piece down to the 2023 level. now, and we will do that consistently through the next 5 years. One of the things that we can look at in our funding plan for this year is if there's amount that we don't spend on capital, we can put it into that and debt exclusion stabilization fund and pay it down, maybe another year or two, to get people a little bit more savings. So we will definitely show you that. Local receipts, again, we've kind of rode the crest of, the rising hotel, meal, and room tax. If another hotel gets added, obviously we will adjust, but right now there's not one permitted. And state aid, again, it's been flat the last 5 years. We've seen just minimal increases, some decreases. So I'm not really comfortable pushing it too far. Expenditure changes, you can kind of see, where we're at with what we know. 2020, we've got some other obligations with step increases and staffing changes. The school appropriation, we just straight-lined at 3.25%. That may or may not be adequate, with a little change in 2023. Technical school, I increased it this year, and then I didn't want to, keep that delta on it going forward. Other charges, they're minimal. It really depends on, it's going to depend on this year, the new expenditure level with the fire station on. And debt service, those are actuals, we know what those are. We have those planned. And employee benefits, that's a kind of a 5-year rolling average that we use. And again, we're going to update this when House 1 comes out, and then I'll have a better idea on the 2023 numbers. And then, this is kind of a messy spreadsheet to look at, but I wanted to give you the breakout of the data, and it does show you with the projections that we've got in place, if you look at the bottom line, for fiscal 19, you can see we've got a $130,000 deficit with what we've got in play right now, and it increases each year as we go out. This is a fluid document. I mean, starting at a $130,000 deficit is, I hate to see deficits, but we've seen much larger ones in other years.
We wanted, for comparison purposes, to look at some historical, you've got that, right, you can provide.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, we keep these going back.
Board members, if you want to look back and say,
Right, I would be very interested to see how, the 2 and 3 year out budget variance has looked historically,
Yep, we can show you that. We have it.
just to put it in context.
The variables that are in play, again, state aid for both town and school, we could see some good news. It's happened, but I don't want to count my chickens. New growth, again, we have that pegged at 843,000. That could go down, it could go up. It depends on, what the developers are doing and what their cash flow is and what their timeline and sales are. Sales are strong, so I'm confident at least in that number.
did you mean fiscal year 2012 where it says 2012, or should have that been 2020?
Oh, 2020, that's a typo, sorry.
See, I did read it.
Wow. And local receipts, 2%. Again, I think, we're fully realizing the rum excise, that was a big jump for us. Excise is kind of plateauing, but we're going to keep an eye on it. We don't get our big excise commitment until March, so I'll have a better idea then whether this needs to be adjusted.
You want to get the city pledge, maybe.
The expenditure variables, the Neshoba Tech assessment, that might be a little high. The employee retiree benefits, we've got some claims that are in play right now that might require some augmenting of this, so we've got to keep an eye on those going forward. And debt service for Alumni Field and the fire station, right now we're banning, it's a short-term borrowing, but when we bond it, we'll know what the rates are, so the estimates that we have may change a little bit. But
Anything scary happening there? I mean, we've been very lucky for a long time.
yeah, I mean,
Everybody has, I guess.
yeah, we've been doing really well in actually paying down our debt before we bond too. So, if we're able to do that, we will. But I think we're fairly confident with the numbers that we have in there. But you don't know till you go to bond.
I got rid of Janet Yellen just before she was about to raise them. So.
I mean, I certainly have heard of some discussion about municipal bonds becoming more expensive with the coming year, right? And the way that municipal bonds
Rates are going
payments
up.
are handled.
Rates are going up. But we have a very good bond rating. But they are going up, yes. Questions?
So our next assignment is to read these and to come to the day-long budget review a week from Saturday.
That's the schedule for which is provided in our packet. I don't know if that's on your presentation there or not, but for you newbies, it's like a feast. Everybody, pie, food, cookies.
Can't wait.
That's a great experience. I mean, I tell you, the opportunity to see everybody in a real-time snapshot, where all the departments are at the same time is a great way to get a grasp of where the town's at. Any other questions or comments for Bonnie on this?
I mean, not until we get from the 20,000-foot view to the
Right.
2-foot view.
That'll be very quick.
That's in here.
Yeah,
That's in here.
right, here we go.
That's right. Any wisdom from Mr. Chairman back there?
No wisdom.
Great.
I'm just here in the spirit.
All right, good. All right. Thank you, Bonnie. All right, Fire Chief Wodzinski, you've got a couple of updates for us.
Where would you like to start?
I think we had the advanced life supporters up first on our agenda.
All right, so we're currently going through the process of hiring the paramedics. We're hiring 6 medics. This was what was voted on and approved at last spring's town meeting. We funded this for the last half of the fiscal year so that we could have that time frame to send them to the academy, complete all the training, and then for July 1st, implement the paramedic program. So right now, they've completed their physicals. They actually have their physical and agility tests next Thursday, this coming Thursday, excuse me. And from that point, all depending on how the move into the fire station goes, they would most likely be starting roughly the week of the 16th, day after the holiday. And they would implement a couple weeks of just daytime training, get them up to speed before they're placed onto shift, and over the next few months, they would be placed into academy classes as the slots become available. As we move forward, actually, let me back up. One of the steps that needs to occur tonight, hopefully, would be for the board to vote to have us withdraw from Samara. Samara is the regional group that we belong to, where Professional Ambulance provides our paramedic service. And
This was part of the plan all along.
that's correct. Yep.
Yeah, it is, and those other communities are fully aware
Absolutely.
over the last year of the plan.
Yep, yeah, everybody was put on notice that Acton just did it July 1st. They had pulled out, and now we'll be following suit as well. And part of the agreement is that we need to give our notice 6 months prior to the end of the fiscal year. And so that falls right into this time frame right now. And by doing that, we give them the notice. It doesn't mean at the very end, we could still have some type of like a mutual aid agreement per se. If we had like a short time of overlap where they could potentially continue service if they needed to. Or we could also have a mutual aid agreement with, say, Air or Westford, who also has, and Acton currently has their ALS service. Right in that implementation phase of when we start. But if we vote on the notice tonight, we can at least get that portion checked off. And then moving in through like January and February, we'll be establishing a relation again with Coastal. Coastal was a billing company, I should say.
Based out of where?
They out of Rhode Island. They're out of Rhode Island.
Yes, give me the name. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Probably
it's
not
out of Rhode
Oklahoma.
But we used them in the past, and we had good success with them. I think Bonnie likes they're very user-friendly on the revenue charts and everything
You've
like
been in conversation with them for over a year, right?
that. About 3, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Chief, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
When you're up and running per shift, you have a lieutenant and you have 3 firefighter medics, every one of those will be a paramedic?
No.
No.
So right now, the other thing that is occurring, we're going through the process of promoting lieutenants. So it will be doing a reorganization. There'll be a lieutenant, there'll be 4 shifts, a lieutenant on each shift, and there'll be 2 firefighter EMTs and a paramedic. 2 groups will have 2 paramedics, 2 groups will have 1 paramedic. And, as through attrition and stuff like that, we'll eventually have 2 medics per group. But right now, it is a mix.
Thanks.
I've got a question too. It's not, doesn't affect the vote you're asking for, but I'm curious how the applicant pool met your expectations.
It wasn't bad. I think all in all, I believe we had 18 apply. And then we went through that process and and the final,
Was
we
18
ended up with
all
8.
qualified, or, I mean, were those 18 qualified applicants?
They were.
They were.
Yep. And they knocked a good chunk out in the very first interview. And we brought 8 forward and pulled 6 decent candidates out of that.
Not a lot of room for error there, though. It's-
No, there wasn't, and we honestly, we didn't settle for anybody. We had the discussions, and we were ready to, re-advertise if we needed to, but we didn't feel that was necessary. And that process actually went through, the final phase of that was involved interviews with the doctors at Neshoba, and they were also very comfortable with the skill level that was presented.
Now, do you think the bigger pool would have been bigger if the incentives were higher, or is there a shortage in the market? I mean, or is it both?
I think it's a little bit of both. Right now, as far as, financially what we're offering, it's on the lower end of the scale for the area. But there is also a shortage of medics that are applying. Surrounding towns are also running into the same thing, and they're offering more, but they really aren't having a significant amount of applicants.
Bottom line is you're satisfied with the folks that you're training.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
And if you don't mind, Paul,
Sure.
with respect to training, do you have any concern about getting everyone through the academy prior to June? Looks like you've got them slotted January through June. They'll go through those.
Correct. The original hopes were we were going to be able to send them all together at some point in January or February. There's been a significant amount of departments hiring new firefighters. So they are currently booking into June now.
Okay.
They've filled, the academy is booked up really quickly. And however, in each of those classes, there's anywhere between 1 and 3 dropouts for every class. So we'll just sign up as a priority to fill those vacancies. And as soon as, once they pass their PAT on Thursday, Friday, they'll have their applications in at the academy. So as soon as the classes come up and there's dropouts, we'll be able to fill those slots.
Okay. So you think it's
Feel pretty
reasonably
confident.
likely you'll get everybody through?
Yes, yes.
And in the event that we weren't able to get everybody through before June, would that be a reason that we might want to enter into a cooperative agreement with another town to cover a little bit before everybody gets through, or would we be able to?
We would still implement the program.
Yep.
It may only be 1 or 2 that may not have it, and we have the flexibility enough
You'd be able to cover
to
them.
rotate, the medics maybe to another shift temporarily while somebody was in the academy.
Okay.
We'll have those mutual aid agreements with all of our surrounding communities as well. We're required to do that as well as us to back them up. And, but I believe we'll have that flexibility, and the goal is to stick with the schedule and implement it on July 1st. And between now and then, we'll finish completing all of our policies, procedures, the applications through the state, and wrap all of that up.
Any other questions for the chief on this topic? If not, there's a motion I think he's asking for.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote pursuant to Section 4.1 of the Collective Purchasing Agreement with the Central Middlesex Emergency Rescue Authority, (CEMRA), for Advanced Life Support ALS services dated November 2nd, 2010, and to notify CEMRA of the Town of Littleton's intent to withdraw from said agreement on June 30th, 2018.
Second?
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Chief, your other topic?
Thank you. Fire station. So this evening, I have our OPM, Kevin Heffernan, is also with us.
Quiet, right here.
So, right here's fine?
Currently,
Sure. Yeah, wherever you're comfortable.
Why, what do you want? I'll let the chief start, you wanna start and?
sure, so right now, as far as our timeline for the fire station, we're coming into the final phases. They're finishing, or doing all of the finishes, wrapping up the exterior, sidewalks, floor finishes, windows, roofing, all of that, things of that nature. Over the next couple weeks, they'll be wrapping up with the installation of cabinets and the remainder of the flooring. Going into January, all of the furnishings will be delivered in the first week. And then hopefully, by the second to third week of the month of January, we're hopefully moving in.
That is our plan right now, to keep it not beyond that point.
Yep.
Right now, as the chief alluded to, and you'll see in your document with the schedule, some of the milestones that we have met recently with the paving of the exterior around the firehouse, which is very important. Some of the things that we will not be able to accomplish now, only due to the weather, would be the exterior plantings, which we've accounted for, and that'll be done in the springtime. We've discussed that at length with the chief on how to proceed with that, and Castagna as well, so they've agreed to carry on, and we're gonna hold an allowance for that work to be done for the spring. We still have the option of doing it ourselves, however, with Castagna only being up the road in Westford, they'll be able to come right back here and take care of the plantings in the springtime, which right now would be the best time to do it. The curbing was done, the lighting is being done shortly. Like the chief also explained, they're starting to do a tremendous amount of interior work. So now we've reached also another milestone where payment number 12 going to Castagna is the one that just is the highest one so far. It's just over $1 million for the project. The original budget, as everybody knows, was $8.9 million. Of that, $6.5 million was Castagna's. They have up to date $478,000 in change orders, which brings up their contract to just under $7 million. They've been, payment number 12, which is $1,003,624, is being processed right now. We have remaining approximately $1.78 million. Okay, we start off with a contingency of $890. And that contingency changed up and down based on items that came into the project that we didn't know beforehand. So this project's been going on for over a year. We were able to provide certain aspects of the project that we had taken out originally to now be able to be put back in, based on originally making that budgetary number. Okay, we had, up to date, we have 8 change orders to date. They total $520,000. We also have a remaining appropriation, approximately $370,000 for the project. However, we have an operational enhancements and owner furnished and PCOs that total $335,000, which leave us with the remaining funds of $34,197. And in a project where you're just about over a month left, it seems to be very, very healthy for what we have to finish. We've basically found our demons.
You're gonna get through a lot of those additional add-ons, or whatever you.
Yeah, we're calling them operational enhancements.
Right.
And on owner furnished items that we need, we'll be able to get through all of that. Now, some of those numbers that are in that budgetary sheet have been padded, they've always been padded. I always like to err on the side of caution, so I go a little bit higher. So some of those numbers, once they're finalized, and we've been working day and night with the chief and the PMBC, along with the assistant town manager, to make sure that those numbers, where they fall, we know exactly how to recoup that money and move it back into contingency for later on, if God forbid we need to use it.
I think we're all familiar that in the digging, and especially behind the station, you discovered a lot of stuff that you would have known was going to be there until you open up the ground.
Right.
Yeah, but that was like late spring or spring when you found that, right? And that continued to be the source of delay throughout the project, because
We started off the project, and that instantly became our Waterloo, our burden right there, the unforeseen conditions. And that did drag on for a little while, because once we found one asbestos-containing pipe, you'd move over for the rest of the foundation, you'd find another one. Ones that were not shown on the town drawings or the plans, nobody would have an idea that they were there. So we accomplished getting all of that out of the way, rebringing in new soil, topsoil, gravel and everything else that we needed. And that was, for all intents and purposes, that was our biggest delay to the project.
you weren't really experiencing, if I remember correctly from the last time I toured, any significant issues on waiting for materials
No.
or subs or anything like that. So it was a pretty well-managed project.
Well, that was, it's a huge kudos to the chief and the deputy chief. They have been on that job site every single day, making sure everything's going well. And, it's also the town's willingness to work with the contractor. So we've been able to work with him through our biggest problems, but altogether knowing that we have a deadline, that we can't go any further. Middlesex wants everybody out. They want that facility back. We want to be out. So there is no waiting around for, I got plenty of time because I have a temporary station. That's not it. We got to get you guys in there, because it costs him money and it costs everybody else money to stay around. And we've had a good working relationship. We haven't had any dropout brawls, like you would say, arguments, that I can say on
We were
camera.
about, a month off from the original goal of a
Yes.
move-in date.
Correct, yep.
So,
Any other highlights you want to point out first?
no, I mean, we'll go over some of the things that we've touched upon with the schedule, like the chief was saying, and you guys have in your packet. The brick walkways and the sidewalks this week. And again, that's a lot of work. It's a good, thank God for the weather. We've been very fortunate. Hopefully we'll have several more weeks of above 40-degree type weather. We get a lot more work outside done. Then the week of the 11th, we're going to be doing interior floors, carpet and tiles. And then we're going to also start up the MEP startups of the equipment, the standalone Mitsubishi units. And then we want to make sure on the 18th, the appliances are going to be delivered and installed for the facility. Obviously, everybody knows the week of the 25th is a very slow week, so we're going to take advantage of that and do the apparatus floor, where you won't have as many contractors there, which will be a great thing for us, because once they come back, you're able to cover that floor, and then you can do whatever you need to do after that. And then the week of January 1st, which also, again, is notorious for being a slow week. However, we'll have office furniture and dining room furniture all delivered to the site, and start to put all that in, as well as the remaining mechanical equipment startups, bathroom partitions, and AV equipment. And then, like the chief had said, the week of January 8th is when we're looking for our punch list. We're going to call it an observation list. We have found out in the past, once you assign a punch list, technically that's what he's held by. So we first give an observation list, and then we'll do a punch list like we've done at the alumni field. We gave the 2 observation lists to the contractor, and then we finalized that with a punch list. That was 37 pages long. But,
The 2 additional months, that conversation went okay with Middlesex? I know that they're under their own schedule too. How about the cost? That's all factored in here? I apologize.
It's all
I said
in,
that.
yeah, everything's in there. We have weekly conversations with them, and they're well aware of our timeline getting into the new building. And they didn't have a
Worked out
problem
great being
with
there,
that.
though, huh?
It really
It's all
did.
run.
It really did.
And we've worked very closely with Bonnie, so again, kudos to Bonnie and their ability to help us track the project budget as well. That's the key thing, that if you have a good accounting group that's going to be able to help us with the budget, we can find everything that we have to, and we're able to track everything and find any miscellaneous things that pop up, because when you have in a town such as Littleton and all the other towns we work in, you always find a little hiccup. Oh, how'd that get put in?
Building committee, had Bob Romley and
Yep.
somebody, right?
Joe
Bob
Colantulo.
Robles, yeah, and Joe
He's there all the
Cole-
time.
Bill Cole was in the beginning portion, yep.
Right.
And Bob Romley's there all the time,
Yep.
when he's out in Florida.
Board members, any questions of either the chief or what's your title again?
OPM?
OPM.
We're the owner's project manager.
Project manager, right.
And just on, are we holding any of those expenditures for the PCOs until closer to the end, or are we at the point where we're gonna jump into spending that additional, what was it, 335? Is that
What we-
all gonna be spent here fairly shortly, or are we still gonna sit on that until all of the construction is done and then spend a little bit of?
Well, what we have is a backup, you have your retainage for the contract, which will be held. But with those PCOs, they are outstanding. Some of it already has work that's been performed, so they will be turned into a change order. But right now, as of today, we have change order number 8. And yes, we're still negotiating those,
Okay.
because there are several items that our side feels might be a little inflated, and they go back to the contractor to revise and resubmit.
Okay.
And we've worked closely with the architect on trying to figure out exactly where those numbers truly come in, because then he goes back to his engineers, and they, yep, it seems fine, or this is way out.
The reason I ask is that it's nice to have 35,000 or 34 and change left over. I also understand there's not a lot of surprises at this point, but 34 isn't a lot if a surprise does creep up. So that's why I wanted to know if we've still got some of those wish list items that we haven't yet spent the money for.
There
in the
are,
event that something-
there are a few items, there's not many, that we could actually say, okay, let's pull off the brakes and go on after that one. But like some of the bigger items on there, like the additional brickwork.
Right, that stuff's got lead time, I get that,
Right.
yeah.
And there's a T&M item for the HVAC work, which is $38,000. However, working closely with the mechanical contractor, we believe that's going to be coming in around 30.
Okay.
If not, that might be another $8,000 to $10,000 worth of savings. We're just not approved, okay, let's see it all. And Brian Forrest, who's our clerk, who works on the job 24/7, has been following them very, very closely on that.
If there are other questions, I know the chief is looking for a vote on the extension of the lease arrangement. Anyone wants to read that motion?
Move that the Board of Selectmen vote in accordance with Section 2 of the lease agreement with TMC Leasing LLC for temporary quarters for the Littleton Fire Department at premises located at 80 Air Road, to notify TMC of the town's intent to extend the lease for 2 additional months and to terminate the lease on January 31st, 2018.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Keep up the good work. Close her up.
Thank you.
And look at that. Right on, we have for the public, I would ask you to indulge us for a moment. The public input members updates, which were scheduled for 7:20, we need to put those at least off until after the first public hearing. We need to start those on schedule as they have been posted. So we're going to do that, starting with the public hearing on the 20 and 25 mile per hour speed limits. And could I ask someone to, Mr. Clerk, would you read the,
You don't have to read the whole public hearing.
no, don't read all the roads.
I'll just read the top part.
Right, that'll work.
Littleton Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on Monday, December 4th, 2017, at 7:30 in the Selectmen's Hearing Room 103, Littleton Town Offices at 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, to amend the Town Code, Chapter 205, Vehicles and Traffic Regulations, by establishing 20 and 25 mile per hour speed limits on certain town roads listed below pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Sections 17C and 18B, as accepted by Article 15 of the October 30th town meeting, special town meeting. Comments thereon may be submitted in writing to the Selectmen's Town Administrator's Office by noon on Wednesday, November 29th, or in person at the hearing.
All right, I'll declare the hearing is open, and I just want to note that our chairman, Chuck Coast, would like to have some input with this. So the anticipation is that we will be after we get input, and there will be probably not closing the hearing, but tabling it to a specific date.
Continue the
Keith,
hearing to a
continue
later
to a
date.
specific date to finish it, although there's no reason we can't cover most of the topics tonight, and I would suggest we probably should start with the introduction of the topic from Chief King.
Obviously, this is, was approved by a town meeting. There's a new state law that the Commonwealth had passed to give the Board of Selectmen control over being able to set speed limits in the 25 and 20 mile per hour zone, which always, speed limits typically are always set by the state after they either do a study or things like that on the streets. And this actually gave the power, once town meeting passed it, to the Board of Selectmen. We did do an exhaustive list on the first go-around, just to take a look at it. Obviously, there is a, in talking to Chris Stoddard from the Highway Department, there's a large cost that gets attached to posting all these streets in red or yellow. There's about $30,000 in street signage and other things, which obviously we can't do right away because there was no budget anticipated for that for this year, specifically for this year. In some of the streets up there, once I've had discussion with some residents and also some different board members, and just in talking, if there's one or two houses on it, there's really no sense of putting a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit sign on it because you can't drive very far down it. So we'll actually, with this being continued, we'll pare down, some of those streets. We do have some streets that we would like immediate action taken on, within this year. And then we certainly can take other streets on a case-by-case basis. We did most of the streets in the lake areas, obviously in the 20 miles per hour, because most of those streets are highly densely populated, and really aren't built for 30-mile-an-hour non-posted zones, some of them. So some of the longer ones, things like that, the feeder roads within those areas, we'd be asking for at some point to be posted. We have had some streets that we would like to do immediately, hopefully within the next hearing, like Russell Street from King Street to the 495 bridge, permanently posted at 20 miles per hour. There's always things going on at the schools there in those projects, in that area. Right now, the signs there say when children are present. Well, how do you know when children are present? Because children are present now from 7 in the morning, a lot of times till 8 and 9 o'clock at night. So it makes no sense, it's confusing to people, just post that section 20 miles per hour. There's also a zone, we'd like 1,000 feet in each direction from the Harwood Ave and Foster Street intersections. It's a four-way intersection. It used to be a four-way stop because of the hill coming down Foster Street and things like that. It was changed to a two-way stop. The residents up in there, we've been getting a lot of complaints about the issues there at that. So we'd like to extend the 25 or 20 mile an hour zone 1,000 feet from there. But a lot of these, things we can certainly take on a case-by-case basis if you don't want to just do them with a broad brush. Because obviously there is, once we went through it, I think we were all kind of surprised at what the cost of the postings, would be.
So it would be your intention to do, is that between whenever we finish, close the hearing and take action, which is usually immediately thereafter, you'll have you're anticipating presenting us with a shorter list?
Yes, I will present to Mr. Bergman a shorter list this week of the streets to go on for the continued part of the hearing, which we'd like immediate action on.
Okay. And Keith, has this been posted like on the town website, the current list of roads?
It was
that we-
posted at the website, it was published in the newspaper.
It was, okay.
too, yeah.
All right.
Well,
Yeah,
if you don't
board
mind,
members,
Chief,
sure.
you had mentioned the intersection of Foster and Harwood.
Howard Avenue.
Is that something prospective, or is that something you're looking for right now with this? The reason I ask is that it's not shown there.
Yeah, it just didn't.
And I haven't, honestly, I've looked at the map, not the list,
Right.
so I think we would probably go by the list, but I'm
Right,
looking for
It's on,
clarification.
I believe it's on the list also.
Okay.
But the list is where it's, anyways, that is myself, Mr. Bergman, and the highway department met up there with residents of that area. And there's been a few accidents there, and it is a tough, no.
You don't need to convince me that is an area that needs a lower speed limit by any means. I just want to make sure
It
that
just
we're.
didn't make the map, and it's a
Right,
good
but I
catch.
do see it in the list here, so.
Right.
The map was done actually before the meeting, that's why
Just for the crowd, Chris, maybe we can identify you.
Oh, sorry. Chris Starr, Director of Public Works. The map just never got updated once we added that,
Okay.
so with the
I
next.
think it's a great addition.
Yeah,
I
with
just
the
want to
next
make
list,
sure
we
we're
can add that.
allowed to do it.
Really easily.
All right, I'll ask if there are any other initial comments or questions from board members, and I'll open it up to the public. If not, okay, then, and all I ask of the public is that you just state your name and address for the record. If you have any comments on the topic of public hearing, establishment of certain 20 and 25 mile per hour speed limits in the listed town ways. Yes.
Hi, Anita Harding, 19 Russell Street. You all know who I am. I've lived on Russell Street for 49 years, so I've seen the schools in action for quite a while. I've also seen the traffic. And when the point was put in, the traffic on Russell Street has become absolutely horrendous. And they're just, it's a through traffic to get to Market Basket, and that's what everybody tells me. The problem that we have is you're putting 30 miles an hour down at the far end of Russell Street, and then you're coming up over the bridge, and you want to go 20 from there to King Street. When the kids let out, when 495 has an accident, when anything else goes wrong, everything gets thrown right on Russell Street. The backup now, at certain times of day, is bumper to bumper stopped. And if you go from 30 to 20, and everybody's at my end of the street, the backup is gonna be a lot worse than it already is. Right now, the police can't control my end of Russell Street at 30 miles an hour. They fly up the street. And the other part is, that's a problem, and it's not against the police department at all, but they fly up and down our street in both directions faster than anybody else. Not always with their lights on. My neighbor stopped. She went like this one morning to slow someone down early, and noticed after, because the sun was out and she couldn't see who she was motioning. And it was a police car who was speeding. And she asked, why are you going to a call? And he said, does it matter? You know, I don't mind Russell Street being used by the school or the police or the fire department when it's an emergency and they've gotta go. But they gotta observe the signs as well. And it's been bad down there for a long time. I've been advocating for 3 months now to get my end of Russell Street's sidewalks fixed, because there's 14 kids that walk every day. That's it. They go out in the morning and they come back. Everybody else is driven. But I'm told that we can't get our end of the sidewalk fixed until 2021, when they do the water down the street and they dig up the road. The end of Russell Street going on to King Street, sidewalk there is terrible. Today, we had probably 50 kids running up, doing whatever they were doing from school, track or whatever, and they were in the road. And nobody's doing 30. I don't know how you're gonna get them to do 20. I don't have an offense to putting the 20 mile an hour in the school zone, I think that's important, but I don't know how you're gonna do it.
Important issues raised, duly noted. Thank you, Anita. Any other folks?
Jared Opiory, New Estate Road. In full disclosure, Paul, I'd like to mention Paul also lives on New Estate, so we're both familiar with the street. And ever since the town did that beautiful repaving job, and I really mean they did a nice job there, you need to keep traffic in. There's a lot of kids, the sidewalk helps, but every now and then somebody goes flying down. Maybe you guys should have put a couple of speed bumps in when you... But Chief, I'd also like to point out that that sign on Russell Street is confusing. I would interpret the 20 mile an hour as during school hours.
Correct.
But one thing that does help is that little speed monitor you have underneath. an awful lot of us aren't staring at the speedometer, and you kind of adjust to what feels right. When the light flashes at you, it's a good indicator, so I really applaud those. I'd love to see more of them in town. As for the subject of posting, if you can certainly declare all of these streets to be 20 miles an hour, but without posting, the average citizen isn't going to know. And does that mean that you can declare it, you can enforce it, and nobody knows about it?
No. It has to be posted. That's why we're coming up with a more finite list.
20 is kind of slow, but it does keep things safe. And roads like Roxbury are narrow enough that probably justified.
Thank you, Mary. Someone else back there? Yeah.
Hi, Diana Paradise, 10 Cricket Lane. I actually had more of a question. I was surprised to see Cricket Lane on this list being called a town way, as my assumption has been for the last several years that Cricket Lane was a private way. So I'm sort of hoping for a little bit more explanation as to how it got. I don't have any issues with sign postings and that sort of thing. It's a rather small, very narrow road, and the residents tend to be very careful and very considerate as we go in and out, but I was very surprised to see Cricket Lane on this list.
I think Chris has an instant mastery of what roads are public and which are not.
Oh, I'd have to look at the map again. If Cricket Lane's on there, it's a direct result of the chief sending me the list.
Oh, there's paths there,
So, to my knowledge, it's a public way. I've never heard in my 36 years that it was a private road, but it'll be news to me.
So that's an interesting comment, because the residents of Cricket Lane have had to raise money to pay out of pocket to have Cricket Lane paving done, because we have been told that the town would not pave because it was a private way. There was a pretty big
Well,
proposal.
it may well be a private way. We can check it.
We're not going to resolve it.
Yeah, we're not, I'm glad you raised the issue. It could be on here in error. I mean, there are a number of town roads that the town plows that are private ways, and there's a process which you're probably familiar with getting, the permission of all the neighbors to do that, and the roads have to be brought up to certain standards. So, you may well be right that Cricket Lane is on this list in error, but we'll know that before we next meet on this subject. Yep.
Allison Kopp, 7 Green Street. So I've only lived on Green Street for 5 years, so I'm not sure when or why the Harwood and Foster intersection became a 2-way stop only, but I'd kind of like to see the 4-way stop back there. I think, my kids are trying to travel by bike back and forth. I see a lot of bikers go through that area, and it can get messy. And, I think the stop sign is especially coming down the hill, is gonna be the only way to stop the commuter traffic, because, they just wanna get home or cut through, they just wanna pick up their car and get home at night, and I get it, but at least at night, you can see the lights coming. The rest of the time of the day, you can't. So I just wanted to put that out there, that slowing it down may not be. Maybe we need to go back to the stop signs that you said were there before. But I just wanted to put it out there.
If they were put up there before, I think they were put up by the town and taken down by the state, because until this change in law was made, we didn't have the unilateral autonomy to do that. But I think the chief identified that as one of the priority sites.
Yeah, I'm just not sure slowing it down to 20 is going to be enough, that's all. So, the chief didn't talk to me personally. I'm a little bit further down the road, but I would just throw that out there as maybe looking at it closer.
Look at the issue of stop signs there too, chief.
We did talk about it down there that morning. Part of the reason the stop sign coming down Foster Street from the train station was taken down by the state originally, was because the stop sign actually increased accidents at the site in the wintertime, because people are coming down that steep hill, and they were actually sliding through the stop sign. People expected them to stop, proceeded, and the problem became is they were, because of snow and ice or whatever, were sliding through the stop sign, and that's brought up the accident right there.
All right. Maybe a 3-way stop. Maybe give them right away. Because that is true, coming down, if you're trying to come down, you do slide right through that intersection.
Some problems we can only solve
Right.
incrementally, but we'll take a whack
All
at
right,
it.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi,
Well, no, you go ahead, I get you
Okay,
first,
cool.
and I recognize that I see you.
Margaret Russell, I live on Berry Bush Road, which is on the corner of Nagog Hill, right on the corner, in fact. Since the repavement's mostly done now, the road is gorgeous and the same level, the same width throughout, beautifully flat. And when commuters leave the tech park or go to the tech park at Nagog, the Nagog Park Tech Park in Acton, they fly. They're probably doing 45, 50. I would dearly love 25 on Nagog Hill Road. When the highway department was discussing the improvements to the road, 3 neighbors and I, all contiguous, were saying we'd love a speed bump. We didn't get a speed bump, which is, we were told it was too noisy. We're saying, look, we're volunteering for the speed bump. We don't care if it's noisy. So can we at least have a 25-mile?
Well, I think it's on the list here.
Yeah, I know. Please, let's vote for it and make it happen.
Oh, you want to make the short list, that's what
I'm tired of, living on the Indianapolis 500 twice a day.
You're taking note of all this? Okay, George, I'm sorry, I missed you a couple of times before.
That's all right. George Sanders, 672 Gray Road. I think on Russell Street, when there's an accident southbound on 495, it's a cut crossover to get to 495 because they get on King Street, then cut across and get on Taylor, and they get on Route 2 and they come back up and get back on 495. But I think Russell Street is south. We have a school there, and we consider all the other schools that we have, which would be Shaker Lane, because the high school, they have a roadway in, and Shaker Lane has also. And I would say that because Russell Street and middle school is there, there's a lot of people that where a lot of them are walking not, but I know that there's quite a few kids walking there. Even coming back towards coming to King Street, coming over to the point there. I think that it should be 20 miles an hour through there. And I think that if we could put these alerts, maybe we need a couple more alerts on that street to let people know this is the speed. And I think a good thing would be that when you do have an accident on 495 the south there, I would say to the chief, if he could afford an officer to be down there in the curve, you'll catch a lot of people that's going to speed down through there. And with those alerts telling them this is the speed limit, then you should just pull them over, write them up. Thank you.
Christine Nordhaus, Star Hill. I'm just curious about the cost per sign to purchase and install, and if someone didn't make the short list, if residents might be able to pitch in to purchase a sign for installation in their area. It's just a suggestion and an idea, because $30,000 is a lot of money. Obviously, you want your taxes to pay for that. I absolutely understand that. But I do think if it were really...
I don't think the cost of the signs would be a determining factor, but,
No, but where he said we couldn't do them all at once, I was just bringing it up as a suggestion.
there might be other factors that determine how quickly we unroll them, but, Chris, you got a per sign cost back there, just so people can have it,
I'm up
you
here.
left, oh, there you go.
Yeah, it's approximately $150 a sign, and that doesn't include man hours.
So, obviously, I think I speak safely, I speak for the board, that if it is a matter of public safety, we're not gonna be skipping on $150 on that basis. But, all right, any other input? Yep.
Sorry, Allison Cupp, 7 Green Street again. As noted before, nothing against the police and nothing against our bus drivers, because we absolutely love them. But as my son mentioned, his bus goes 40 miles an hour down the road you were talking about. So we all have to be held accountable, no matter what hat we wear, when we do these things.
Good point. Okay. All right, Jerry, I'll let you get another comment in.
Real quick, it's a little off topic, but the other thing the town
That's
can
what I
do for
feared.
The thing I'm trying to point out is I believe you folks can post truck exclusions on some roads. That might help a little bit on Russell Street.
Yeah.
Okay, as I indicated at the beginning of the hearing, at the request of our chair, Chuck DeCoste, who would like to have some input on this as well. And I think just based on the feedback we've got tonight, unless the board chooses otherwise, our intention would be to table the remainder of this hearing to a specific date forward. I will ask if board members have any initial comments now, or whether you want to reserve them until after we close the hearing and have a discussion. I have nothing right now.
My sole question is your plan for rolling this out and the enforcement thereof. I assume it's not going to be at midnight, you change all the signs, and then you deploy every officer you have the next morning and start writing tickets. Have you given thought to how you intend to roll this out and make sure people are aware and are being, we want to give a bit of time for people to get used to it.
Obviously, it's like anything else. While we do deploy there, I mean, for the first, few weeks till people get used to things, they typically, it's a verbal warning, or they're just, depending on what the speeds are. Obviously, there's been some, there's been some targeted enforcement on Russell Street, there's been targeted enforcement on Nagog, the streets that we know. Our cut-across streets certainly are problematic. Everyone knows where they are. Russell Street has become one, especially because of the point, but also once there was a traffic signal at the end of the road, obviously it's become more of a cut-through. So, obviously, coming down with a finite list, there's going to be, obviously, there isn't going to be a ton of enforcement if we do a couple of the roads up on the lake. The enforcement will be on your cut-through roads mainly, like Newer State, they've been running that, so we'll run it out slowly. I'll come up with a pared-down list for you to look at that hopefully takes some of the neighbors' concerns that up in here, and, we'll move forward that way.
And I like the idea of the pared-down list and implementing that incrementally, because then your staff has time to pay attention to particular areas as residents get used to it, and then move forward.
And to be quite honest with you, when I was coming up with the extensive list, it isn't in my mind necessarily what the cost is gonna be to post it, because it's not necessarily my purview. It was something I got afterwards, though, and it's like, do you know what this is gonna cost? Not that, like you said, public safety matters for a $150 street sign, but there are some roads on there that certainly, there's no sense in actually deeming them, because there's 3 houses and it's a dead end. If you drive 25 miles an hour, you're gonna drive into a tree.
Anita, if you've got a quick point, you can.
One quick point. Several months ago, I asked the chief if we could have one of those lights down that designate how fast you're going down on our end of the street, and I offered my lawn, and instead it was put down at the other end of Russell Street. And I was wondering if it would make any sense to have it put at our end of Russell Street for a while.
Oh, Nate, I'll try and get it shifted up there for you.
Thank you.
All right.
No comments.
Okay,
Yep.
great. All right, then, if the board doesn't mind, I wonder, do you have a suggestion, Keith, on a date?
Well, I think at this point, you might want to table it to your first meeting in January, so that if the chief has
That's great.
a
Updated.
revised, a list of semifinalists.
And
something
we'll,
like
and we'll hope that our friends in the press will share that as they did the previous list, and you'll get it.
And we can, we can issue that as a press release or renotice it.
Okay.
And so if you meet on the 8th and 22nd of January, so I'd suggest the 8th.
January 8th, all right. And there is a suggested motion there. Could I ask one of my colleagues to move?
Move the Board of Selectmen vote to continue this hearing to January 8th, 2018.
Second.
Okay, the motion then has been made and seconded to continue the hearing on the 20 and 25 mile per hour speed limits to our meeting on January 8th. Any further discussion? I'll assume there's no objection from Chase, you seem to be in favor of this. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no, the ayes have it. We have another hearing starting in a minute or two. I don't know if we have an opportunity for a couple of.
Can I just share one thing, that we were on Nantucket for Thanksgiving, and I came across one sign, well, actually, there were 2 signs, but they were both at the point where the ferries come in and the cars get off, and That's the only sign that they have.
So the whole island's
posted still,
25 unless they tell you otherwise.
Unless it's otherwise, so.
Well,
we
Littleton's
can't-
not an island.
We can't get away with that here.
Hollis, New Hampshire does something similar to that.
Is that right?
All their main feeder roads
Yeah.
coming in saying they're posted at 30 or 35.
Move it to
Forget what it is.
Continue to the 8th of January. Okay, all right, we still have a couple of minutes to go. Member comments, I'll start with Selectman Knox, give you the easy one. Do you have any member updates?
Just a very busy weekend in town with the great football game that we didn't come out in the top end, but I want to certainly congratulate the football team and the coaching staff, not just this year, for continued success. And you had the bazaar and you had the tree lighting last night, so the town's been active. We have a great town.
Chase?
I'd like to congratulate all the middle school students in the production of Annie. It was absolutely incredible. It's hard when you're sitting in the audience to remember that these are only 10, 11, 12-year-old kids, and then they come out afterwards and you realize that they really are just little kids and they just put on an amazing performance. And it really was incredibly well done. So the students and all of the staff and volunteers and parents that helped them really deserve a significant amount of credit for doing great.
Cindy?
The Christmas bazaar was packed. It was really exciting. It was fun to get updates about the game throughout it. I helped with the boosters apparel table, and I have a new appreciation for anyone who works in merchandising because I was exhausted after a few hours. And I just wanted to mention Lilia Flores. She is trying to raise money for her service dog for her son Lucas. And they're nearing their goals. So if anyone has any interest in supporting that fundraiser, they can look Lily up on Facebook. It's the SDWR Foundation. She was at the bazaar, and she really enjoyed the whole spirit of the day. And the tree lighting last night was really fun with the kids and Santa pulling up on the fire truck, and it was really nice to be a part of that now that my kids are older. Just be there and see the younger kids all excited, so.
Indeed,
It was
Scott,
a nice
Tom.
community night.
Yeah. Thank you guys for bringing him in on the fire truck. It made my 4-year-old's month, I think.
And believe it or not, there was even more activity over the weekend. I went to the multi-church Christmas concert at the Latter-day Saints Church, which the Baptist Church Congregational, Unitarian, and St. Anne's Parish all participated in as well. It was packed. It was a great community event, and it's been mentioned by a couple of my colleagues, the tree lighting, the Rotary Club specifically should get credit for putting that together first. The light department, of course, for hanging the lights, and then believe it or not, if you were there, you know that the lights the switch didn't work initially. So we have to give thanks to the fire department for bringing a generator down to actually light the lights for the trees. So all's well.
came
By the
together.
time Santa Claus got there, the lights were ready to go. All right, and I think we are at time for the second public hearing of the evening. This is the one, thank you, Chief, regarding the Cricket Lane parcel, Chapter 61A, right of first refusal. When I open the hearing, I'll ask Selectman Knox if he wouldn't mind the clerk to read the notice, and then I'll discuss how we're going to conduct that.
Certainly. Legal notice, the Littleton Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on Monday, December 4th, 2017, at 8 p.m. at the Littleton Town Offices, Room 103, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Mass., to consider whether or not to exercise the town's right of first refusal under Mass General Law, Chapter 61A, subsection 14, to acquire from George Jones and Mary Beth Mesrobian 11 acres abutting 100 Spectacle Pond Road, map 23-4-A, also known as Cricket Lane, property for a bona fide offer of $1 million. Notice from the seller is on file at the Selectmen's Town Administrator's Office and available online on our website at littletonma.org. Comments thereon may be submitted in writing to the Selectmen's of the Town Administrator's Office by noon on Wednesday, November 29th, or in person at the hearing, Littleton Board of Selectmen, Charles DeCoste, Chairman.
Okay. I will open the hearing, and in doing so, I will ask, since there are a number of complicated legal issues here on the process that our town administrator Keith Bergman guided us through that, and I know he's got support from town council here as well. And after that, we will, we've also, I should note for the record, we've received a number of letters and emails and other comments from the public, and those are all a part of the record, and we've all received them and taken them into account. But with that, Keith?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll go through some of the basics. We are conducting a public hearing on whether or not to exercise the town's right of first refusal on a piece of property that was under Chapter 61A, and I believe that it continues to be subject to a right of first refusal through the end of this fiscal year. We received a notice. We received two notices, but the one that is germane is dated November 1st, 2017, and the initial notice erroneously notified us of two parcels when it's in fact only one, the 11-acre parcel that's subject to 61A. We have 120 days under Chapter 61A to exercise the right of first refusal once we receive a notice from the seller. So that actually takes us to March 1st, 2018 is when the 120-day period would be up. Within that period, the opportunity exists to exercise the right of first refusal in a number of ways. First, the selectmen can exercise it by voting to do so, and with that vote of the selectmen being then contingent upon a vote of town meeting, because the selectmen can't acquire property on their own. They need an authorizing vote of town meeting to do it. It takes a 2/3 vote of town meeting to acquire land, and it also, and the other thing that town meeting does importantly is come up with the money. And the at issue is that the notice contained a bona fide offer of $1 million between the seller and a buyer, and so the town has the opportunity to acquire the property for that, the amount of that bona fide offer. In some prior discussions about this property, it was asked whether we could, instead of convening a special town meeting between now and March 1st, could we get an extension from the buyer and the seller to allow us to bring the matter to the May 2018 town meeting so we could take it up in the normal course of town events. Town council has been in touch with the attorneys for the buyer and the seller, and they have declined to give us that extension. So if the town wishes to exercise a right of first refusal, that would involve at least if it's the town that would acquire it, it would require a town meeting vote that happens prior to the end of the 120 days. So by next March 1st. The way it works is that the right of first refusal would need to be exercised within that 120 days, and then beyond that, there's another 90-day period in which the town could effect the closing after, if it were to require it. Another way to act on a right of first refusal is the statute allows the Board of Selectmen to assign the town's right to a nonprofit conservation organization. My read of conservation is that it does not include recreation, and would defer to town council on that. But if the purpose of the acquisition was for conservation purposes, then the ability would exist for the Board of Selectmen to assign the town's right of first refusal to a nonprofit, a group like, not to name names, like Sudbury Valley Trustees or the Littleton Conservation Trust or some entity such as that. That organization, that assignment would need to take place prior to the expiration of the 120 days. That organization would then have another 90 days to effect closing after being assigned. And I think there I'm told there was at least one other example where the Board of Selectmen in the past had assigned the right of first refusal to a nonprofit, and they'd pursued it at that level. The other action that can be taken by the Board of Selectmen is to waive the town's right of first refusal, that is to determine not to acquire the property, and to so notify the seller in writing. And as we've had a number of public hearings like this in recent years, sometimes that has been the outcome, that if, especially if there were a property that there were not a lot of interest in, that if typically those hearings don't have a room full of people, and at which point the determination is made to grant a waiver and not to exercise the right of first refusal. So those are some of the basics on how on what the options are in exercising it. I think it's important to go over some of the procedures that are involved in that, because it involves if the town were to acquire it, if it were to be acquired in the town's name and not in a nonprofit conservation organization, there would need to be a special town meeting that is held prior to March 1st, 2018. At town meeting, it would take a 2/3 vote of the town meeting voters present. The only laws that we're operating under is that we have to post a warrant under the statute 14 days prior to special town meeting, and by our own town code, we are required to send the written town meeting report out at least 14 days before. It's been our practice to close the town meeting warrant lately at least 38 days prior to town meeting, so that we have, there's a lot of work to be done to brief the number of town committees involved, whether it's the Finance Committee, Community Preservation Committee, Park and Rec, Conservation, all of and that all takes time to bring recommendations back to the Board of Selectmen. So ideally, the determination on if we were to go forward on calling a special town meeting, that decision is best made sooner rather than later. If the Board of Selectmen were to decide not to call a special town meeting, the acting chair has asked that we identify what other options there are. And there is the general laws do provide that by petition of 200 registered voters of a town, a Board of Selectmen can be required to call a special town meeting to act on that matter. Now, that process requires, that petition process gives the selectmen less flexibility in figuring out when the town meeting were to be held. Not that I'm encouraging this, but I just put it in that by way of example. If we had a petition of 200 voters filed by next Monday night, that town meeting would need to be held by January 25th of 2018, because that's when the 45 days from next Monday would be. I think as a practical matter, it would be helpful if a town meeting were held, to have it sometime in February. And just for our planning purposes, sometime in February might give us more time to review it, get information out to the voters. The other thing that's important to keep in mind on expenditure of funds, and we're talking about $1 million, is what would the funding source be? And we have a briefing that Bonnie can go through of potential funding sources, but among the usual suspects would be community preservation funds, and we could just either appropriate $1 million out of an account, or we could borrow the money and pay the debt service. We will hear that that's not an option because we've spent the CPA money on other things, so that we don't have the ability to just dip into our balances from community preservation and fund the $1 million. We can get part of the way there, but part of the way would also require borrowing, which is incurring debt service, and that in fact the community preservation debt service budgets are spoken for the next four years at least, because of other acquisitions that we've made. so that even though recreation or open space, which are the two purposes that we've heard, got a lot of input about, even though those two are in fact eligible for CPA funding, and for us to use CPA monies, we don't have the balances or the borrowing authority to easily access the entire $1 million account for that. So of necessity, Bonnie has outlined other potential proposals of how the town might expend money, and among those is the use, either in whole or in part, for having a debt exclusion to the general fund. I think Bonnie's recommendation was that, was it 150,000?
Could come out of CPC.
Could come, that there's some amount of borrowing that we might be able to do. But if it's borrowing and if it were to be debt exclusion, just be aware that that also requires an election and a debt exclusion ballot question. And we've been talking about
Borrowing outside the levy limit.
borrowing, if it's a borrowing outside the levy limit. And we can get into what the funding sources would be. If it's borrowing inside the levy limit, doesn't require debt exclusion. If it's using available funds like free cash or something else, then it doesn't need to. But just to put it out there, that if the funding source were to involve any amount of excluded debt, then we'd have to consider not only a special town meeting, but also a special town election within that time period. So we looked at, well, how do you do that? It takes a 2/3 vote of the Board of Selectmen to put a debt service ballot question on. That's 4 out of 5 votes. And at the election, it would require a simple majority vote of the voters. For election questions, they must be placed on an election warrant at least 35 days prior to the date of the election. So as a practical matter, that's a deadline of, you've got, I just note that January 25th is 35 days prior to March 1st. So any petition that came in after that would not give us sufficient time to act. And unlike a special town meeting, there is no petition process provided for in the statutes to require that an election be held, just so we're aware. So we have information, and Bonnie can go through it at an appropriate time, of what potential funding sources are, but we just wanted to put the mechanics in front of you, that there are options that can be considered of exercising it in the town's own name, assigning it to another party, or not exercising it. Those are the basics.
Thank you. And if that didn't all seep in and be comprehended, feel free to ask questions during the hearing process. I guess I would start with the board members if board members have questions.
I just wanted to pose a couple of questions that I think I know the answers to, but I've fielded them. First is that we're held to the $1 million bona fide offer, not to an appraised value. So exercising the right of first refusal is based on $1 million. We don't send out an appraiser to establish an appraised price on this. The second question that I had was in terms of scheduling. In the event that we needed to schedule a town meeting, we had talked about there being some ambiguity between exercising the right of first refusal and actually appropriating the funds. We've reached a determination that we only need to choose to exercise the right of first refusal within the 120 days.
Tom can opine.
Right, so Tom Harrington, Town Council. So here's how the process works. When you technically exercise the right of first refusal, the money should be appropriated. So you don't exercise the right until you're able to pay for it. So at the time that we send, and here's the process. We have the money, the board votes to exercise the right. We send the notice to the owner. We take the notice and record it at the Registry of Deeds. And both those things need to occur prior to the 120 days expiring. At the time we send the notice, we include with it a purchase and sale agreement, which essentially, we're stepping into the shoes of the current buyer.
So it's more or less the same PNS. We send it to them, and when they send it back signed, the 90-day clock starts ticking. So you have
To actually write the check.
to actually write the check. You usually don't wait that long because you've got the money, you've got the PNS, let's get it done, but you're allowed that amount of time if you need it. Thank you.
Any other board questions or comments at the outset?
I'd like to have Bonnie go through it, what you wrote down here, Bonnie, in more detail.
Sure.
I mean, I think it'd be nice to everyone here to know the different options and probably one of the ones that you would favor for the town for the best.
There are basically three general options, and I would preface this with the fact that I'm looking at some CPC fund balances that are remaining. We've appropriated pretty much everything for fiscal 2018 out of CPC. We did get our state matching funds in, so that created a little bit of a balance that is available for appropriation now. In the open space bucket, it's only $20,000 and change. And in the undesignated fund balance, it's $147,000. I would note that there's $291,000 remaining in the recreation bucket, but I was aware that that was kind of being looked at for the beach house. It is available, it's a funding source, but it was something that I think Alicia, that was something that was planned for the beach house project, which is in design right now. It's estimated that that project's going to be between $300,000 and $500,000. So, again, it's an available source, but I did not consider it for this analysis. So I'm looking at those two buckets of available funding, $20,000 in the open space account and $147,000 available in the undesignated, which can be used for anything. The borrowing against open space and undesignated is consumed right now over the next 3 to 4 years by the recently purchased parcel of the Williams property. Then we'll have taken care of the $300,000 that we authorized for that, and that will free up some more borrowing capacity. So in the short term, I've come up with 3 scenarios that could fund this project. The first is to issue short-term borrowing 3 to 5 years for $850,000 and drawing $150,000 out of CPC funds between the open space and the undesignated balances. We wouldn't borrow against the CPC funds. Again, we don't have the capacity there over the next 4 years, but we would borrow against the general fund. And that would impact the funds available for capital planning in the years that the debt would be due, about $200 to $300 a year. Again, because you're borrowing $850,000. That's one. The next one we could do is to issue short-term borrowing 3 to 5 years for the $850,000, funded through the general fund, and do a debt exclusion for that. That would add above the 2.5% that we're allowed to capture under the levy. It would impact the homeowners an average of about $88 a year for a residential property, estimated at $418,000, which is the average this year.
Bonnie, can I stop you for a second? Keith, can we put this up? We have it in our mail packet, which she's talking about right now.
Bonnie, was that $88 per year for the average residential property for the 4 years?
It would decline a little bit as the
Okay, but it was,
principal paid down.
in general, a 4-year window?
Yes.
Okay.
So again, that would involve taking $150,000 out of CPC and borrowing the $850,000 as a debt exclusion. Would require a ballot vote. Option C is my preferred option if the town's interested in doing this. You'd appropriate from the undesignated fund balance. We've done a rough analysis. I have not had it certified yet, but I can get it certified. I can ask DOR, and they'll probably accommodate me. But in going through our normal review and running everything through our financial policies, when I fund the reserves, it looks like we'll have approximately $708,000 available after we fund capital and all of the other financial policies that we have. This could be appropriated for a one-time expenditure, such as this. So I would combine this with $150,000 that we could take out of CPC, and then I do a small note, short-term inside the levy for $150,000. That way we can minimize the impact in the general fund and our capital plan. We pay it off probably over 2 years, probably just $75 a year, and get it out of the way. This way, I think you're not limiting the borrowing capacity for CPC. Again, it doesn't really have any borrowing capacity for the future. You're not sacrificing the capital plan in a major way, and you're following all the financial guidelines. So you're adhering to your reserves, you're adhering to the financial policies. and you'd be able to draw down about $700,000 from free cash. But I would need to get that certified if that's the,
I appreciate that you did this in relatively short time, I think today, correct?
Friday?
It was in the packet.
In time for our packet. It's even shorter than today.
But and I don't dispute that these may not be the best three options, but just for clarity, some of the limiting factors there are factors of our own design. Legally, if folks choose, there's a range of options that extends to transfers from stabilization, capital stabilization, borrowing under the levy. I mean, it's our own use of the CPC funds that determines that we don't have anything left there. That's not the only way we can borrow money. It's just the way we do so in keeping with our plan. So I'd offer that there are other options possible, a myriad of them, that, and I have a lot of respect for our plan. I just think if this becomes a late in the game, as it were, priority, then maybe it out-prioritizes some other items in the capital pipeline and doesn't disrupt financial plans, so that if that's the will of the town, we can do it without necessarily doing a debt exclusion. I mean, that's obviously an option, but it isn't called for by any financial
yeah, and it's not our
restriction.
recommended option.
It's not a recommended option, and it's not something we're compelled to do by any of our own finances. We're in pretty good shape. I mean, I wouldn't say that should encourage us to spend foolishly, because as we just heard about the CPC funds, we are now committed, basically, for anything in the foreseeable future. So, that's why I think the board's been wise to say no in the recent past on at least one item that's come up. So, anyway, I am very glad that you've put the options out there. I don't know where we might end up in this discussion, but if the board's going in one direction and public decides they want to go in a different direction, they have a means to do so.
Just one, Bonnie, on option C, it says the impact, there'll be an impact for fiscal year 2019.
Yes, it's probably about $75,000 within the capital plan, but it's a minimal impact.
Okay.
Okay. That's it for board members, and I just asked the public, I know we've heard officially from a few other town departments and boards, and maybe we can start with any of those folks if they want to speak up on behalf of a committee or town department. You can summarize your pitch and your position, and in any event, everybody will get a chance to speak their piece. So,
Christine Nordhaus, Littleton Agricultural Commission. Do I need to stand up?
you don't need to, but
I'll just read a brief letter from our chair, Will Pickard. The Cricket Lane property is farmland. As discussed at our recent Agricultural Commission meeting, the AgCom provides a strong endorsement for the preservation of this Cricket Lane property owned by the Jones family. The parcel is of substantial size, which is important to maintaining our existing local agricultural infrastructure by providing accessible land for our local farmers to farm. Additionally, the 11 acres is large enough to be farmed as a sole enterprise without needing to be attached to an existing operation to be viable. The Cricket Lane parcel's soil is sandy loam. It is agriculturally considered early land. It warms quickly after winter and drains easily. It is important, this is important because it allows for an extended growing season, providing additional cuttings of forage for livestock, and allows for more than one crop of vegetables to be grown each season. In addition, the proximity of the field to a water source is a substantial advantage regardless of the crop being grown. Irrigation, which can save a crop, is significant to farmers when considering crop input costs, risk, and reward ratios. In addition to the desirable agricultural attributes of the Cricket Lane property explained above, there is also substantial support from the Spectacle Pond Association and neighbors to preserve this parcel as part of our working agricultural landscape. The field is proof that farming is beneficial not only to the farmer but also to the neighborhood around it by providing a means of passive recreation and aesthetic value.
Thank you, Christine. I'd ask anybody else who has letters that were submitted to us, please just summarize them. We do have minutes in the
I thought it was gonna be quick.
Wasn't bad. Any other town boards, departments, committees?
Alicia Day, Director for Parks and Recreation. So essentially, the memo that we had said is, we did this master plan, and one of the pieces on there was creating new fields. So if we're keeping in, the prospect of the master plan, this is one of the goals that was set on there. We were tasked to do a field needs assessment, which had currently been completed as of September. And the results had come back that we are overusing our fields, that we do need to increase the amount of grass fields that we do have. So this is a perfect opportunity for having 11 acres of potential active recreation space. Seeing again, as it's very flat, it would be very easy to turn over into a field complex. We've also talked about a few other things as well. So we've been doing special events as long as Parks and Rec has been around. But recently, we just had our trunk or treat event, which for the first time, we had about 1,200 people. So if you can imagine that all being kind of crammed into 300 King is a bit excessive. So we are kind of growing the bounds of the special events that we're putting on, and really do need to look at having some of these bigger open spaces, and this would also provide that as well. It could also be a place to be able to put in a walking path, and to put in a fit course that we've talked about, which we have looked at doing that at 300 King in the past, but in seeing how busy that it is currently with the basketball courts and the playground, it would be wonderful to be able to have this involved in active, recreation space, having fields and being able to have a walking path out there as well.
Thank you. Any other town departments or boards before I just go to the general public? And seeing no other, Mike Zeldin? Yeah.
I just want to report, this is not a statement of position, it's a report, a reminder, that in the master plan.
You might want to state your position.
Michael Zeldin, 11 Old Florence Street. I'm the chairman of the Master Plan Implementation Committee, so I get to read the master plan every day. The master plan, I'd just like to remind everyone here, is the result of several public meetings in which the number of folks who showed up was approximately anywhere between 90 to 200, and people have the opportunity to express their views on a variety of subjects. And the bottom line is this: if you look at the recommendations that the public came up to formulate the master plan is very clear in basically making a recommendation that the master plan for recreation has a medium to high priority by the sentiment of the citizens who participated, obviously, a lot of them. And as far as, quote, open space or conservation, the recommendation was made by the townspeople, it's in the master plan, that a study be done of setting priorities. There is no mention in this, they were given the opportunity to do so, of making any specific purchases in the near term. It was what criteria we're going to use and why we're doing it. Instead of doing episodic, the idea was to, and this was expressed, to have some idea of where we're heading. And there's been several changes made in points of view about how to deal with, quote, open space. But with the recreation, it was very explicit. The master plan of the recreation aspect was of great interest and priority of getting that executed by public.
Thank you. Okay, folks, all I ask is that you identify yourself by name and street. Really?
Hi, Diana Paradise, 10 Cricket Lane. You very eloquently walked through the first option in terms of the town being able to exercise its right of first refusal for purchase of the land. Could you maybe give us a little bit of information about what happens if you were decided to assign your right of first refusal to a nonprofit conservation group? And it sounds like that also is a 120-day period, and then what happens, what is that process? I think you'll hear from a number of folks, I think, in the Cricket Lane neighborhood who are going to be, and Barron Way neighborhood who are going to be severely affected by the decisions here, and we're trying to understand what the options are besides the town deciding to exercise its right of first refusal for their purposes. Thank
Well,
you.
I'm gonna refer my right to Keith, and he's gonna refer it to Tom Harrington, town council.
So,
543.
so what the town has the option of purchasing or,
Speak to our town, Tom.
good evening, everybody. So the town has the right to assign its option to a conservation organizations. What that means is this. So again, the town steps into the shoes of the buyer in the purchase and sale agreement. So in the same way, whoever we assigned it to would step into the shoes of the buyer in the current purchase and sale agreement. So a few facts around that. If the town acquires the land, they can use it for whatever they want. They can use it for general municipal, recreation, open space, build a school, whatever need they have, they can use it for that need. If we assign it, so technically the conservation group can use it for agriculture, for open space, or for recreation. That said, I don't know of any conservation group that does recreation, so it's more likely an agricultural or an open space use. They also have an option to use up to 30% of the land for, so typically what you'll see is they could take 30% of it and sell that off for house lots, and then conserve the remaining 70%. So they can recoup some of their costs with the 30%, as long as they're retaining 70%. So those are the rules for the conservation organization. As far as the timing for the conservation organization, we assign them the right, and the right is exercised. So the same thing happens for the conservation organization that would happen for the town. A notice is sent to the seller saying that the town is, in this case, assigning its right. That notice is then recorded. Once that notice is sent and recorded, the conservation organization has the same 90 days to close the deal. But before we assign to the conservation organization, it shouldn't be speculative. That conservation organization needs to be able to say to us, we're ready to purchase, we have the money available, assign us the right so that we can complete.
Thank you, Tom. Other folks? Yes? Yep, you.
Okay, thanks. Allison Kopp, 7 Green Street. So I guess my question right now is, besides farming and recreation, do we have any other conservation groups that have come forward, say New England Forestry Foundation, which I actually consider that to be recreation because you can walk in the woods, but do we have anyone else that's come forward that's interested?
Well, we did have a memo from the local Littleton Conservation Trust expressing support in preserving it. I don't know if we can interpret that as an interest in having rights assigned to them. Are you in a position to speak, Rick?
Rick Finley, 46 Beaverbrook Road, Littleton Conservation Trust, and New England Forestry Foundation. I would say the New England Forestry Foundation would not be interested, only because there's not a tree on it.
We got 120 days.
The Conservation Trust has looked at it carefully. It's not, again, it's not something that we would preserve for conservation land, only because, again, it's not very natural. We are very, very, very pro in favor of preserving agricultural land, that's no question about it. I probably shouldn't be speaking for the whole trust, but personally...
If Don were here, he would.
Yeah. He may show up too. Personally, I think the value here is, this is coming from a landscape designer as well, given the soils and the flatness, that there may very well be a possibility of getting a couple of fields in here, parking, without doing anything but mowing the grass. And you could do it in such a way, hopefully, that it would be extremely low impact. I worry a little bit about ticks, but I mean, you could actually carve out what you need in terms of driving and parking and the fields at minimal cost. And I think the savings there are enough to make this, a valuable purchase.
Right.
It's more than what would be going into creating a field somewhere else. But anyway, that's my personal feeling.
Folks up there? Sanders?
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. First of all, I want to thank Bonnie for the job that she did here in trying to find ways to purchase this land without increasing our tax rate and by not affecting other projects that we got in the pipeline, so to speak. And she says, you know, with this 750,000 will be like a one-time thing in the fiscal year. I say to this board that you need to exercise your right under the 61A as a town, and I'll tell you why. As a town, all the citizens has a right to say, do we go this or that, do this or do that, but when you give it off to somebody else, then you start narrowing it down to what they want to do. And that ain't the way that the taxpayer money should be used. If we're going to spend the taxpayers' money here, we need to make sure that we go about it in a way that first and foremost that we think about the taxpayer. And I think that the C plan that she came up with is the way to go, because I believe that that land needs to be preserved. I got the distraction with this lady wanting to raise her hand here, so I think, so I think that the resident in that area, they have seen this as a farm over there, and they have good ideas about how that affects their community in that segment of the town. And I find no reason why that the town cannot go and come up with the money to do this, because I don't recall anywhere you spent money to buy other land that you gave it off to somebody else. The taxpayers end up buying it. So I think this is another piece of land that needs to be bought by the taxpayers, and there's no reason why this town can't do it. Thank you.
Hi. To piggyback on that, because I think we maybe come from different places, but I completely agree. I think we need to. Oh, sorry, hi. Kimberly Harriman, 8 Grant Lane. I think we absolutely need to exercise our right of first refusal. If you've ever met me, you know that I'm not in favor of putting any more houses on any more farmland or woodland ever. I know other people feel differently. But what happened with Cooper Farm in particular really broke my heart in a little bit in a way. And that was because the town never had a chance to vote on it. And it needs to come to the town. I know not everyone's gonna vote the same way that I'm gonna vote. And I'm always gonna vote yes on land. But I think it needs to come to town meeting and to a town election so that people actually have the chance to decide what to do with the land.
Thank you. I'm not gonna stop the input, but I think it's worth pointing out, and I'll get shouted down by one of my colleagues if I'm wrong on this, that we almost have two parallel decisions going on here, whether or not to exercise our option, and then should we choose to exercise it, there's a couple of different directions we could go with it. I don't believe that decision has to be made prior to purchase, Keith, is that right? We could buy it and then determine later on whether it's a recreational use or a conservation use or an agriculture use, unless one of the funding mechanisms stipulates it, right?
Right, that's right. And because we're, well, I don't know, I defer to Bonnie, in your plan, are we relying on any community preservation funds?
Undesignated.
Okay, but it would have to be an eligible community preservation purpose, so.
If we adopted that option, funding option.
Right, if we do that, if you do general funds, then you can acquire it for general municipal purposes. If you are using community preservation funds, you need to pick one or more CPA purposes.
Follow-up technical question, could that piece of the decision be made later, as long as it's prior to town meeting? The funding mechanism?
It needs to be, it is a determination made by the Community Preservation Committee, whether they recommend the CPA funds to town meeting or not. So it definitely is take place prior to town meeting. We would probably draft the article in the warrant so that it was broad enough to have many uses, and then when we're on town meeting floor, we could decide.
So we may only have a couple of weeks to make a decision on whether to go and how we went with it. That could
You have a
almost
little
be
more
2
than that.
months.
You have a little more than that if we just get the direction to write a broad article.
Okay. Gentleman in the back?
Yes, hi, my name is Ted Trollope. I live at 96 Cricket Lane. I'm a direct abutter on the southern side there. Just want to state my opinion about what we think we should do about this land. I am well in favor of it maintaining its current character as open space. However, I am vehemently against turning this into a recreational land with fields, water facility perhaps, the fit court. That will substantially impact the quality of that neighborhood. Just count the number of houses that are direct abutters there. To have a routine draw of people into that area is going to substantially affect the quality of life in that neighborhood. Partially why I purchased the thing that I did almost 20 years ago.
Thank you, sir. So with another hand over here, ma'am?
Beverly Schultz, I'm in Spectacle, I'm on Sanders Point Road, and open space is so important, and there's so little of it, and the master plan says, yes, in the future we should do things, but the master planners don't know when something that's agricultural will all at once pop forward. So I wanted to say, one of the things we can do is to look at our neighbors. The town of Ayer, in this week's paper, they have set up a conservation fund and put $500,000 into it, and they're going to allow their conservation commission to make deals if any land, agricultural land, comes free so that they are sure they don't lose it. And the town of Groton, for 25 years, has had their Groton Land Trust that can buy land and if the town needs it but can't afford it. And one of the big things they would have done a number of times would be, for example, taking this 11 acres and cutting out 1 acre and dividing it into 4 lots and selling it for $250,000 a lot. And that's $1 million, and the town would have 10 acres of open space. So if you absolutely can't afford to do it one way, find another way, so that we don't just let it go by, and then it's in development, and then it can never be brought back again.
I will point out that the means of the town's savings for open space purchases have changed over the years, but as far back as 25 years ago, we had a public land acquisition fund and a number of projects from the Wickham Frost property to the Prouty property to the Morgan property to the Hartwell property, the Morrison orchard, are all were funded in some cases in all, in some cases in part by funds that we had set aside in advance. So, and we're in a pretty good financial position that way too. Yes, ma'am.
Nora Levy Grace, 15 Cricket Lane. I'm a direct abutter on the northwest side. We've got about 150 feet of our backyard, which is about 20 feet of land and then the field. So it's got a very dear place in my heart and in the heart of, I think, everyone in the neighborhood. The funny thing about this field, and it's kind of hard to tell when you're just looking at it as a field to be bought, is that it creates a neighborhood out of being a common between multiple streets. So there's really no real reason why people on Cricket Lane, people on Barron Way, people on Spectacle Pond would necessarily ever come together and feel like a neighborhood, except for this field. People walk their dogs in it, play with their kids in it, they fly kites in it. I know that's all very touchy-feely stuff, but it matters. I mean, it matters to me, obviously, because it's my house, but I would have met so many people because of that field, because of the opportunity to just walk in it, to be in it, to have it as a resource for the neighborhood. It creates the neighborhood. So whether through recreational fields or development, the sort of destruction of that common area has an impact on everyone around it, and not just in an aesthetic way, but in the sort of soul of the neighborhood way. And I am very pro having recreational fields, but in this particular area of town, it is incredibly quiet and incredibly sort of remote feeling, and that would be a huge impact on our house and on many of the other houses around it to have that much noise and that much parking. So that's just something for everyone please to be aware of when you're voting on this. Thank you.
We'll be back over here. So,
Hi, my name is Kevin Davis. I'm on Whitetail Way. I'd like to bring to the board, the attention of the Board of Selectmen, a decision by the Littleton Sustainability Committee on November the 30th. The decision reads, the Sustainability Committee supports the investigation of a feasibility of a community solar garden at Jones Field. A community solar garden would allow for 1 megawatt of solar power generated for every 5 acres of land. With 11 acres, we can have close to 2 megawatts of power being generated. The power generated can then be fed into batteries for the protection of our Littleton grid, as well as help with the grid resiliency that we have in town. The technology has matured enough for this to be a reality. We've seen that on TV. There are several companies that are providing real-world solutions today to provide that resiliency. Solar panels also have a 25-year lifespan, and they're warranted as such. Having a solar garden also generates money, which will be able to offset the borrowing and will support our town taxpayers. At this early stage, numbers have not been run yet, but I'm sure there is a path to have the solar garden generate significant income. Part of this garden can also have the people of Littleton buy power, green power, for those that are unable to install solar power on their homes. I'm sure we could also get support from LELW because of all their green initiatives. With this, it would also help with the energy independence of the town, as I previously stated. Also, before we upset some of our ag people, studies at many ag schools have shown that you can maximize the farmable ground as you install the solar farm. Positioning of the poles and such would make it so that the solar panels are elevated and allow for equipment and for people to walk under the panels. We can also use that as walking paths. We can also orient the solar panels in an east-west orientation. This would allow for the ag to get their maximum solar for the southerly exposure during the day. It's something that we can really consider with the ag farmers. Harvard has done this with great success with their solar farm. Groton has 3 PV solar farms. There are also many state supports for grants to build out this type of configuration. This can be done. With this idea, I hope the Board of Selectmen would support the Sustainability Committee to investigate this and to consider the purchasing of the Jones Field at Cricket Lane. Thank you.
thank you. Yep.
Good evening, my name is Kathy Lubarb at 690 Great Road, and as a member of the Littleton and Air Spectacle Pond Association's Task Force on Preservation of Open Space, I speak tonight on behalf of the president and the officers, one who's right here, Ken Schultz. Hope it's all right. So I just want to say a couple words about the organization. We've been around for 19 years, and we've taken a prominent leadership role in promoting environmental stewardship of this part of North Littleton, which includes Spectacle Pond and Forge Pond, 100 acres of land that hosts town wells for both Littleton and the town of Air. And our record of accomplishment includes helping to form the Littleton Clean Lakes Coalition and working with state, local, and private organizations, including the Ford Motor Company, to create results that can be respected and sustained. So I'm really pleased to be here tonight to speak about this issue. And you've heard passionate neighbors speak about this beautiful piece of land, and I believe a number of good points have already been made about it. And while it's easy to dismiss 11 acres as being too small to worry about, when there are larger plots to consider, I ask you to think about the impact on this part of town. Because as you drive down Spectacle Pond Road, you see the top slopes of a massive quarry on one side, and soon after you pass the town transfer station on the other side of the road. And while both serve a purpose, neither can remotely be called beautiful or peaceful, I think we could say. Between the occasional blast from the quarry and noise from the machinery at the transfer station and along the tracks, this is a neighborhood that really values peace, open space, and quiet, and doesn't get a lot of it, and is giving back to the community in a lot of ways with these two things on either side. So while the impact on the neighbors is great, we also need to recognize that this 11-acre plot is a vital piece of an important ecosystem, which will greatly impact a wide variety of wildlife, including deer, fox, woodchucks, hawks, and even the occasional bobcat has been seen recently. So the other thing is the relative placement of trees, whitetails, woods, the open space, the 11-acre field, and then the water, Spectacle Pond, creates a space for all of these creatures. And if you leave the woods and the pond, but you take away the middle part of this configuration, you basically leave these creatures homeless and wandering. So we must not destroy this irreplaceable ecosystem. It's our heritage and that of our children. And finally, we as a town must come to grips with the fact that we're just beginning to see the limits of our water system. This is a lot of work that the Spectacle Pond Association has been working on with Leon Weaver, doing a huge amount of work. And we are kind of beginning to be at the limit of our water system and also our precious open space. So I feel like it's time to act wisely about our future and to really take this into consideration. So I do ask you in this way on behalf of the association to please exercise your right and see what we can do to keep this as open space, conservation, and farmland. Thank you.
Any other input before I bring it back to the board? I see a couple more, so I will, with your indulgence, take these two gentlemen and then close up with three. All right, we've got three it is, all right.
All right, I don't mean to go ahead of everything with this, but I'm Dave Locke at 2 Barron Way. May I don't think give you guys something? Wait. I had to bring it to the meeting. So, when I moved into this town, my wife and I were planning on having a child very, very quickly. And we were almost pregnant, so that. Regardless, and we saw the open spaces, we fell in love with the open spaces, and we fell in love with what the town meant to us. When I was overseas, the only thing I could think about was open spaces back home. I'm from Indiana, which is much more flat and much more corn and just everything else that's not as fun as out here. But one of the biggest things to me was thinking about what it was to come home. And when I walked through that field, a lot of people, I have extras too. The picture just from today at 3 o'clock, it's a pretty big field, it's pretty awesome. Put a ton of houses on it, but then you ruin what the integrity of the community is. You ruin what we're trying to stand for, what a lot of people are trying to come home for. And I'm not trying to leave that as on my soapbox for military, but we come home to be home. There's not a lot over there for us. You spoke about the CPA and everything, and we're tapped out. I totally understand that, and it's kind of awesome that you did put together all those different options. One thing on here, I will just speed read it, I promise. We met with the Spectacle Pond Association and the abutters around. We put together a little idea of, we recommend that a small committee be formed with the intention of finding suitable solutions that aligns with the goal of preserving Jones Field. We request that the committee be comprised of one member of the Board of Selectmen, an officer or appointee from Spectacle Pond Association, a representative of the neighborhood, the abutters, and a representative of an organization with experience in acquisition of protection and conservation of open space, chosen from the Conservation Commission, Open Space Committee, or Conservation Trust. It could be other ones as well, that's just options. The Preservation Committee's mandate would be to draw up a set of criteria that sets boundaries on what is acceptable and appropriate for the open space, do the appropriate outreach to possible donors donors and project sponsors for support, assess the projects with continuous follow-up and follow-through to meet deadlines, prepare and present recommendations to the Board of Selectmen as needed or requested. That's just something I want to throw, that you wouldn't be alone, it wouldn't be you. You exercise your right, everybody's saying what we want to do, we can put them all together, and everybody can we can build and formulate what it needs to be, so then your money is being spent correctly. There is an option to do it, to exercise your right. That's my hope, that we do exercise the right as a town, put it up to vote, but then we have people on this end and on your end supporting you and supporting each other to actually build it to what we need it to be.
Thank you, David.
That's fine.
And I'll wrap up with Jerry and Erica, and then maybe we'll bring it into the board for this
Jerry
discussion.
Delby, New Estate Road. I'm not a direct abutter, so I don't have a direct vested interest in preserving the character of the neighborhood. However, as a town resident, I have a very big interest in preserving open space. It's been said many times that residential development rarely pays its own way. And you can be assured that when this is developed, you're either going to have half a dozen or more McMansions in there, adding more strain to the schools and other town infrastructure, or with the town now open to high-density development, who knows? This could be the first condo complex. And I believe by the rules, if you're talking townhouses, you could put what, 80 of them on the site? The road wouldn't support it, but theoretically, that's what you could be facing. In the long run, I mean, $1 million sounds like a lot. To put it in perspective, we spent $600,000 on artificial turf. For a few hundred K more, you can get 11 acres of the real stuff. I see another advantages of this. There's a section of frontage on Speck Pond Road. That's an ideal parking area for the conservation land across the road. I also can't tell where Cricket Lane runs. I see a lot of lots that appear to be landlocked. I don't know if that's true or not, but if there are, is there any possibility the town could eventually obtain access to the pond?
I think there's dirt roads that go into it.
Maybe some of those
Dirt roads that go back to, there's little cottages that we live in.
Okay, so they're not just abandoned
We're trying
land.
to keep all conversations through the board.
Okay. But the point is, I support the purchase of the land. These opportunities, we're at the mercy of the developers. We have no control over the timing. And Bonnie's done a fantastic job in coming up with some creative financing that keeps it within the limit. I would heartily urge the board to go forth with trying to purchase the land, get it in front of town meeting, and hopefully we get an affirmative vote. Thank you.
Erica, you want?
Erica Poncorni, Fox Lane. I just had a question about the timeline. So if you were to assign this to a group to purchase it, I assume it takes a while to find those people. So what are we talking about? When do you need to make a decision as to this is the way we're going in order to meet all those timelines?
Tom?
So your key time period is the 120 days, which expires on March 1st. So if you're looking to assign it, those conversations need to happen soon, because those organizations need to find the money to do the purchase. And you don't want to technically assign the right until you know that they're ready to go. So I think you want to start those conversations now.
As a practical matter, I think Keith, you mentioned probably within the next couple of weeks, that either we'd have to decide whether we're going to do it as a town or transfer those.
I think it would be difficult to be on multiple tracks there, but Tom's right that whichever way you go, there's 120 days in order to exercise the right of first refusal. And if we're trying to attract an outside entity to carry the ball for us, I don't, I think we need to do that pretty quickly if we're also simultaneously planning to head
It
to
might be
a
overstepping my
meeting.
bounds to say that while that was academically an option, it's probably not practically an option at this point.
The usual suspects haven't come forward, right?
Right, I mean, I
Come
think
forward.
certainly it would be worth asking, but absent an affirmative yes, we would be foolish to count.
Okay, I was about to wrap up and I see, all right, I'm gonna look these last two hands, and they're both, you've both spoken before, so I hope it's something new. Mr. Sanders?
Yeah, and there's others in here that spoke also. I just want to say that for this board, since Bunny been in this town, and Mr. Burton been in this town, projects and things that came up with their professional guidance that they have given this town and this board, they have kept this town where it ought to be. Make no mistake about it. They have done a fine job as far as the taxpayers go in this town.
Duly noted, thank you. And final point.
Sure, thank you. Again, I live on Cricket Lane. This is a significant issue for all of the residents around Cricket Lane. This is a piece of land that you've heard is near and dear to everybody's heart. It is surrounded by private roads, very close-knit, quiet neighborhood. We all want to figure out what we can do to preserve that. And I think we've heard a number of very creative options tonight that shows our commitment and dedication to helping the town figure out how we can preserve this. Because you ain't never gonna get more land. And once it's gone, it's gone. So for us, our objective first and foremost is to work with you all and the different conservation entities from this town and other towns to figure out what we can do to preserve this very precious space. We don't want to see this become a massive town recreational facility that would absolutely destroy the entire nature of this neighborhood. And this is a neighborhood. We understand the need for those types of facilities within the town. We would suggest this isn't the right place for it. And we are willing to, and committed, as you've heard tonight, to help the town figure out what we can do to preserve it in a way that makes sense for the town, both from a entity perspective and keeping the nature and the makeup of this town, and also making sure that it's financially responsible and that we're being good stewards of the land. Thank you.
Thank you. We can go a couple of ways with this, board members. It's a pleasure that we close the hearing and then have discussion amongst the board, or would you rather your comments be part of the hearing? It's not really that much of a difference.
Academic distinction in my mind.
Okay. Okay. All right, then why don't we, then entertain a motion to close the hearing then?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now, discussion. Anyone want to open up with their thoughts on it? We've heard a lot.
If I can just clarify something,
Sure.
the vote today, if we were to vote to preserve the land or a right of first refusal, today, we would just be deciding that, right? Not how it's financed or,
We can do as much or as little as that. We can do all that and more, right?
You can do a lot, but the main thing in order to move forward is, and we've crafted the motion to have the board vote its intent to exercise or not the town's right of first refusal. If the direction is that your intent is to exercise it, there will be action required at future meetings, probably starting with 2 weeks from tonight, when we'll bring you a warrant for calling a special town meeting for a date in mid-February. And based on what I'm hearing, craft that warrant in a language which allows for a maximum flexibility on how it will be spent, so that the voters at town meeting can choose from multiple uses. That's at the board's direction, and you can decide that when you put the warrant in.
A month or two's time to figure out on further input and discussion with other boards in the public.
Right.
What direction to go with it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
that was my concern.
Chase?
I guess I've got a couple points I want to make. The first is that I think we missed an opportunity here. So with respect to the master plan and prioritizing land and property, if you look at the assessed property of this land, if we had been out in front of this, I think we may have had the opportunity to acquire this property for less than $1 million. And I think that belies the need to ultimately go through that assessment process like we've talked about and set a set of guidelines that we want to look at, because now we're in a position where we've got to make a decision based on a bona fide offer rather than perhaps what the property owner may have been willing to accept had the town approached them. So that's my one negative
Presumes a
comment.
lot. I mean,
I think it absolutely presumes a lot.
predict what might come on the market. I'm not sure if we went around and picked properties to approach people on, this would have surfaced.
I completely agree, but that also argues for putting together that, a rubric, a structure based on what we're looking
Yeah,
for.
that's a high priority of the method.
Right, that said, while we have a lot of residents here that abut this property, I think the significance of conserving and preserving this property is far greater than what the residents themselves experience. It really goes to the character of Littleton, and although the residents themselves may benefit marginally more than people on the other side of town. The fact of the matter is that it's a matter associated with who we are as a town and what we want to preserve, and this agricultural space is integral to that. So I don't want to lose track of the fact that there's a bigger meaning here than just what the residents are interested in, or the
Okay.
abutters.
Cindy, do you have some thoughts?
I do have thoughts. So how many abutters are here tonight? Can you raise your hands? I'm just trying to get, okay, thank you. I have a lot of thoughts about this. And I hear what the abutters are saying, and I really appreciate you coming out tonight and your input. And it's been very helpful and insightful to me. I'm hung up on the money piece of it. I'm hung up on the funding piece of it. I'm hung up on, and I'm just being honest here, you know, these things come before, projects like this or opportunities like this come before the town, and we're scrambling to figure out how to fund it. And I just would like to know what else now is going to get bumped back? What other potential capital projects is this going to affect if the town does go forward, say, with option C, to buy this land? Because I think there's a lot of other needs in town, and I'm not diminishing this need whatsoever. I'd like to know if we have any forecast or thumbprint of that. Bonnie, maybe you could help me with that.
This will not affect the normal capital spending that we do in a fiscal year.
Okay,
It will start, if we do a borrowing, a small borrowing, it could impact it by 50, 75,000 in the next year or two.
normal capital spending.
Normal capital spending.
Okay.
We spend $2.5 million a year on capital in any given year.
Right.
This will not impact that much more than maybe 50,000
Okay.
in a year. There's the opportunity of, there's a $700,000 ability to make another acquisition for something. So if there were another project, that would present itself, then, if you spend it on this, you can't spend it on that. So
Right.
That's probably, I guess, the argument that
Right.
you're looking at.
Right.
But it would not impact the normal
The
operating.
normal capital spending, but it could put another project maybe in town that's been on the back burner for some time.
Or the other thing that we have in recent time used, if there's additional money that's left over, we put it in the, one of the stabilization funds, most recently the debt exclusion stabilization fund to reduce that outside borrowing.
As part of this plan, the $700,000 that gets shaken out at the end, there would be appropriations that would be required under the financial policies to the debt exclusion stabilization, capital stabilization. It's required before spending further. So you would be augmenting those reserves and then still be able to do the $700,000.
Right.
I'll offer my input. I mean, I made it kind of known the last time we discussed this, when we scheduled this hearing, that at first blush, for a variety of reasons, including the price, I thought it was a good deal for the town, that we should be acquiring it. I was, at the time, principally driven by stated needs for recreation land, and I was frankly surprised tonight to hear how much resistance there is to that, at least in some quarters. There's we often hear that we should be spreading those recreational properties across town. This part of town doesn't have a lot of protected space, doesn't have a lot of town facilities, period. So either way, in my mind, whether whether the argument for making it recreational fields or agricultural or open space, I think the value of $1 million for an 11-acre parcel that's largely buildable at this point, that's not a bad deal at all. And I know we have the strong financial foundation. The question is, and I think this is appropriately what you were getting at, Cindy, too, is will we consciously make a decision to do it because we have the ability to do it? It's a zero-sum game. Somebody does get pushed back in line, and I think we need to be very open about that, and I think we need to get the finance committee in a discussion of that, and since we seem to have a lot of competing interests, everything from the anticipated arguments in favor of recreation or open space to the more recent and well eloquently stated arguments for continuing an active agricultural use, to something as innovative as the solar panels that were talked about. I want to make sure we're in a position to fully vet all of those, and that we keep our financial options, our funding options open. But that being said, whatever direction we go on, I still think the argument is there that this is a good deal for the town to acquire it, and make the simplest route go, that we be the ones to call for a town meeting, and then figure out the details in between. Those of us who grew up in town, Joe and I probably played Little League 15 years apart, so on fields that were purchased before I was born, but people knew at the time, while we used it for recreational fields for 20 years, that now that's where our high school sits. And it was known at the time that that would be future school expansion. So if we buy it now and we maintain some open options, at least as, I would make that as a point of argument, that we should keep some options open. That doesn't mean we have to do anything with it tomorrow, and we're still better off for having acquired it.
Can I mention something?
Sure.
I certainly hear what Cindy's talking about. I have a lot of people that always come to me and say, you're taxing us right out of town, so I understand that. But I think Ms. Harriman pointed out something that's still sitting in my gut, in my heart, when we talked about the Cooper property, how that, in a lot of ways, slipped out of the control of this board through nothing that this board did. But we never gave the town a chance to vote on it. And I think that's my biggest point that I want to make, is that I think our decision tonight should be go back to the townspeople, that they can make the choice and what they want to do with it, and that we just don't, our board just doesn't say no to it, we leave it open and we let it go one thing further. And I agree with what you just said too. I think there's time in the future, in the near future, to try to decide, after we do this, which avenue we want to take for what this land's going to be used for.
Or we may well reach that conclusion before town meeting. I don't know, I just think, either way, we have the time to do it, and whether we reach a conclusion or not, I'm sold on the value of the purchase, whether we know what we're gonna do with it or not.
Can I speak to the value of the purchase too? Because I, like Cindy's concern, there is a fundamental opportunity cost here, right? If we spend $1 million on this, at some point or another, we're not spending $1 million on something else. But with that said, I think there's also a significant cost to the town if we were to allow this to be developed, because it would ultimately cast a shadow over our long-term economic outlook. I mean, what's one kid in school cost? 15 to 20 grand in taxes, and you don't have to put very many houses with very many kids on there to recoup that opportunity cost just in money you're no longer spending on kids in school. And, it's an economic
I'm with you on the
reality.
result. I disagree with that. I hate that argument. It's, all of us live in houses. I don't think any of us live in caves or tree forts. And everybody's kids have to go to a school somewhere, and Littleton's a perfectly good town to go to school in, and those rights should be there. But I think if the town wants to preserve an open space, we ought to do what we've historically done, and I advocate doing that now, and that's proactively preserving open space, at the same time welcoming people, in whatever new houses get built. I don't know, something mean about that I don't like.
It's not mean.
It may seem mean, but I think it's an economic reality too.
Well, there's a cause and effect, I think, to every decision we make, and I just hope people realize that, so that was really the point of my statement. There's a lot of needs in town, and I'm not diminishing this need whatsoever, so.
To go what you were talking about, Paul, just this past weekend, talking to someone who wanted to preserve the land, because I moved here because I love the natural feel of the land and the open space, and I come to find out that he moved here 5 years ago and into a new house, so.
Somebody was against that house getting built too. does the board feel comfortable that, you know, with the divergence of opinions here, that we can craft a motion here that gets us to move forward? And I will accept guidance from our legal counsel, town administrator, et cetera, on doing that. And if so, would someone like to make a motion?
My only question about the motion as written here is, does it, as written, preclude us from assigning the right of first refusal to, I don't necessarily want to close that avenue off. If we talk to Sudbury Land Trust tomorrow and they say, yep, we got $1 million, we'd love to spend it on the town's behalf, that makes the argument a little easier.
You can rescind this and revote, right?
Oh, I don't think we voted on.
They're not
You
gonna-
should keep it, I think you should
Yeah.
keep it open, definitely should keep it open.
2 weeks. Keep it open for 2 weeks.
You don't think we should have a vote tonight?
No, if, Rick is saying that we should keep the option open, I can't see keeping it open for longer than 2 weeks if you
Which
were
is
to
our
do that.
next and last meeting of the month and
Yeah.
year.
I didn't mean.
2 weeks from tonight, you need
I
to be
very much
calling a special town meeting.
want to see this motion. I just want to make sure the language of the motion gives us the opportunity for either the town to exercise the right of first refusal or assign that right.
Would that language be acceptable?
Yeah, I
So
think
just
you-
adding a clause in there, or assign it, and we
Yeah,
can,
and or.
right,
Okay.
okay.
At the same
Yeah,
time, I
that-
don't think you need to vote tonight. You
Yeah,
can-
that would, I mean, the purpose of a motion like this is to,
I
yeah.
absolutely agree.
The purpose of any motion tonight is simply to send a signal to the community of which way the wind is blowing.
Right.
And whether there's institutional support for acquiring the property or not. Sounds like there is, so that if you have the, if you have the intent to exercise or to assign the right of first refusal in the motion, that should cover it. I would say that what we need to be prepared to do is to decide which it is 2 weeks from tonight.
I would agree with it, so everybody should be on notice that if that's an option.
We're either gonna call a special town meeting,
Talk to your people.
or we're gonna assign it
Yeah.
to,
And also, we should probably I don't know, FinCom, do you guys meet again between now and the 16th?
No, but you're on the 16th.
Okay,
16th is our next meeting.
that's your next meeting, okay. Well, what are we, you
16th?
meeting on a Monday? What do we have, a joint meeting that night?
Saturday.
That's the Saturday.
Oh,
That's the
right,
Saturday
right.
meeting.
Why are we saying the 16th? Why did I say the 16th?
it's
Okay.
the,
Do we have another Monday night meeting?
yeah, 18th.
The 18th?
18th, yeah.
Okay. Should we put it off to the 18th then, Keith?
Yeah, 18th.
Right, okay.
Yeah, 2 weeks from tonight.
But we can discuss.
We're
it
not
with
gonna
FinCom
decide it on a Saturday.
Right.
So,
But we'll all be posted for board
it'll be
meetings.
posted, and,
Are you suggesting that we don't want to entertain a motion tonight?
No, I just the opposite. I think we should have a motion, and it ought to be the broad one, in that we resolve that issue of outside interest, outside groups, by the 18th.
I agree that we should have a motion tonight, if for no other reason than to send a signal to our town departments to start thinking about both the financial disposition as well as the actual infrastructure disposition. You know, Parks and Rec, with this in front of you, we'll have something more concrete to work with. Conservation will have something more concrete to work with. But per Joe's point, I don't think we have to entertain a motion tonight, though I would prefer.
No, I mean.
Half my point in doing this soft shoe, Keith, was that you would be correcting that language up there to include that clause. Should we,
I'm trying to limit
Yeah,
my,
oh, all right.
I'm trying to limit my
Anthony,
screen
can
time,
you,
yeah.
I don't have access to over there.
Oh, man, all
I'm
right.
good, but I'm not that good.
Can you wing it verbally?
Well, you'd say it's intent to exercise
First
or
refusal.
to assign.
Or to assign, there you go.
Are you handing that to me, Paul?
All right, well, you've been the most vocal. I'll take it from any quarter, though.
Is that praise or criticism?
We'll see.
Okay, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen votes its intent to exercise or assign the town's right of first refusal under MGL Chapter 61A, Section 14, to acquire from George Jones and Mary Misrobian 11 acres abutting 100 Spectacle Pond Road, R23-4A, also known as the Cricket Lane property, for a bona fide offer of $1 million.
Second.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Here we go. That doesn't happen very often.
No, I think that calls for a drink, so.
Do we have any samples?
Renewing the annual,
Usually have
Thank you. Thanks,
pointing
Tom.
out the unpopular but very necessary, financial question. But we are so damn frustrated.
So, one last procedural motion.
It should be. Bring it, people need to be in front of us.
No, but I keep.
One last procedural motion. It won't take long.
Please carry your joy into the parking lot. We have other business to attend to.
They got louder.
Right. Is Chief King still here?
Where's your gavel?
There's a gavel over there. All right, folks, we've got to return to a couple other items.
Folks, take it outside.
Take it outside. We're gonna finish up. Thank you. Thank you.
Well,
Wow.
well,
Thank you all for your time.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Town Administrator, Assistant Town Administrator, license renewals.
this is the annual renewal of liquor licenses tonight. 2 weeks from tonight, we will have all the other licenses. Under Chapter 138, the licensees are entitled to get their license renewed for the coming year. If they file a renewal form in November, as they all have, whether a license get issued or not is a subject of whether they pass inspection. So it's a procedural vote tonight. It preserves their ability to get a license. We're aware of a couple that might be facing inspections issues, but
Is this place Taka ever gonna open?
well, that's one of them, that we're now, it'll be the...
Diane, gone there yet?
It's the third,
Only
yeah,
special people get in.
it's entering its third year of having a license. So,
I guess he hasn't got a.
You know, we could use a speakeasy.
any day now.
I did get into the liquor store for the soft opening. I just noticed they were open and wanted
Oh,
it.
they didn't have a hard opening? for
Well, that's
the liquor
coming.
store? Okay.
Yeah, you'll be the first to know, I'm sure.
Okay,
Keith.
okay, I hope so. I didn't find out about the dentist.
Yeah, that was a,
So,
we get free floss, I think.
yeah.
Do we want to read, do you want me to read this list or should I?
No, you can just reference it as a made.
And
as
it's
a
been
part of
vetted.
it.
I don't want to get ourselves in trouble here. Remember once we reissued somebody's Class 2 license and they'd moved out of town? It was
Yeah,
embarrassing.
we'll be careful about those at our next meeting.
Do you want to ask the deputy chief if he's gone through?
Oh, yes, well, the chief and deputy chief are here. We're about to approve the liquor license renewals. Any issues here?
We have no issues with all of them.
And you have seen the list?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Board members, any other discussion on it?
Fire chief?
Oh, what, yes?
I have an issue.
You do?
Unfortunately, VFW, they are significantly out of date on all of their inspections. They need, roughly a couple of weeks' time, they need to have all of their systems re-inspected and to turn back on.
Have you been in contact with them?
We have, and they have received the notice. We would recommend holding that until that is complete.
Okay.
They're in the same category as Taka, that is, they're entitled to get their license renewed at this level, but it will not be issued until and unless.
Okay,
it's
so
been-
we
don't have the
they understand that none of these issues.
You don't have the
have been
authority
issued.
under 138 not to renew a license.
Okay.
So we just don't issue the license if they don't pass
But
inspection.
it shouldn't necessarily affect our motion on this.
No, it doesn't,
Okay.
no.
Thank you for that input, chief.
Another quick question. Was there I seem to remember a ABC sting or something like that. Was that ultimately, I don't even remember who was involved in that.
Yeah, one of the package stores.
The hearing was held, we don't get notified about the hearings, but ABCC on Littleton Convenience, they had an issue.
And they've resolved that, taking corrective action.
They did have a hearing on
Goes
it.
on the state level, so normally what happens is the state will say, first offense, don't do it again.
Okay.
We haven't gotten the disposition of that. That was happening this week.
I think we're about 98% of the enforcement is done locally, that they keep
Right.
us in the loop. Right.
And even if a license violation were in front of this board and you were about to consider to take action and that hearing was scheduled 2 weeks from tonight, you'd still be obliged to renew the license for the coming year, and then by a due process of a hearing, take any action against the license later.
So it's a very tactful reminder that we don't have it
Authority.
to do here.
And there is a motion prepared, and I'm waiting to hear
Where is it?
all you people with your little iPads there.
All right.
Spin around
I'll
and
read
find
it.
something. I've got it right here, writing in black and white.
All right, we ready? Move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the annual renewal of licenses for alcoholic beverages for calendar year 2018, for the list of said licenses as printed in the meeting notice addendum to be made a part hereof.
Do you put the exception of?
No, I think Keith said they don't get issued unless.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we,
I'll second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded then. Any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed? Okay, another motion I'd like to hear. We got an affirmative vote, by the way. I know what you're here for. A big yes.
I just like to hang out.
Okay. Well, we got your email too, so.
Move that we
Motion-
adjourn.
Yeah.
that's what he's waiting.
I think it was a second, wasn't it?
Yeah, second.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. Any further discussion? No. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.
The switch.